Odora Kingsley, a retired office manager, shocks her dismissive children, Imagin, Thorne, and Fern, by revealing her secret identity as EK Wisteria, a renowned artist with a multi-million-dollar fortune. Hidden for decades, her art and investments flourished in a secret basement studio. As her family grapples with feelings of betrayal, Odora prepares to unveil her legacy at an exhibition, risking their judgment. A mysterious leak threatens her planned revelation, raising questions. Who betrayed her trust? Will her children accept her dual life? The stage is set for a dramatic unveiling that could redefine their family forever. If Odora's story of hidden passion inspired you, please subscribe to our channel. Your support fuels more tales of courage and creativity. Like, share, and join us for exclusive content tomorrow. Tell us where you're watching from. Let's build a community celebrating extraordinary lives together. It all started with a cardboard box, unremarkable and plain, toppled over in a moment of childish chaos. My grandson, Ren, had been darting through the house, chasing the neighbor's tabby that had slipped through an open door. The box, once neatly tucked in a corner of my living room, spilled its contents across the hardwood floor. Colorful trinkets, scattering like fragments of a life my children barely understood. I stood frozen, watching the mess unfold, as a familiar weight settled in my chest. My eldest daughter, Imagin, let out a sigh so heavy it seemed to carry years of unspoken judgments. Her manicured hand gestured toward the scattered items, her voice sharp with exasperation. "Mother, why do you hold on to all this clutter? 45 years of work, and this is what you have to show for it. A pile of knickknacks better suited for a garage sale than a home." Her words sliced deeper than she could have known, each syllable a reminder of how little she saw when she looked at me. I said nothing, my lips pressed into a thin line as I knelt to gather my treasures. My knees ached with the effort, but my hands moved with care, cradling each item, a tiny carved wooden bird, a smooth stone painted with delicate swirls, an origami crane folded with precision during stolen moments at my desk. These weren't just objects. They were fragments of my soul crafted during lunch breaks at Briarwood Insurance, where I'd spent nearly half a century as an office manager. Each piece held a memory, a quiet rebellion against a life that demanded I be nothing more than reliable, invisible, ordinary. I felt the sting of Imagin's dismissal, but beneath it, a flicker of defiance stirred. I wasn't ready to let her words define me. From his perch on the sofa, my son Thorne didn't even glance up from his phone. "You should think about downsizing, Mother," he said, his tone casual, as if he were discussing the weather rather than my entire existence. "Sell off whatever you can. It'll make things easier for all of us." Easier for whom, I wondered, my fingers tightening around a small metal pendant I'd etched years ago. His words weren't cruel, not intentionally, but they carried the same undercurrent of assumption. That my life was a burden to be managed, my possessions a problem to be solved. I looked at my children, each so different, yet united in their misunderstanding. Imagin, in her tailored blazer, radiated the confidence of someone who measured success in bank balances and titles. Thorne, scrolling through his phone, seemed detached, as if my life were a puzzle he'd rather not solve. And Fern, my youngest, the dreamer who floated through life with an artist's heart but a follower's hesitation, stood quietly, her eyes skimming my collection with a mix of curiosity and embarrassment. She shifted her weight, tugging at the sleeve of her cashmere sweater, unwilling to meet my gaze. In that moment, something inside me cracked, not broke, but shifted like a fault line finally giving way after years of pressure. For too long, I had carried the weight of their expectations, their assumptions, their quiet disregard for the woman I was beyond mother. I had spent a lifetime accommodating, sacrificing, smoothing over the rough edges of their lives while tucking my own dreams into the shadows. But now, standing amidst the scattered remnants of my hidden world, I felt the weight of those years lift, replaced by a quiet resolve. "Actually," I said, rising slowly, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands, "I believe I have far more to show for my years than you might think. More than you could possibly imagine." Imogen's eyes rolled, a gesture so familiar it barely registered anymore. "Mother, please," she said, her tone softening but still laced with condescension. We've seen your bank statements. Dad left you comfortable, but let's not pretend you're sitting on some hidden fortune. Her words hung in the air, sharp and dismissive. But they didn't wound me this time. Instead, they ignited something, a spark of determination to show them, to make them see. Not everything of value is found in a bank statement, I said, my voice firm, cutting through her skepticism. Perhaps it's time I showed you what I've really been building all these years. My name is Odora Kingsley, though most call me Dora. For 45 years, I worked as an office manager at Briarwood Insurance, a job that never earned me applause or admiration. When I explained what I did, organizing schedules, mediating disputes, keeping the office humming like a well-oiled machine, people's eyes would glaze over, their interest fading before I'd finished. But I was good at it, exceptional even, in the way I could anticipate needs, soothe tempers, and keep chaos at bay. It was a quiet kind of power, one that went unnoticed but left its mark. My late husband, Bartholomew, Bart to those who knew his warm, lopsided smile, taught high school chemistry with a passion that lit up a room. Together, we built a life in our modest colonial home on Wisteria Court. We raised 3 children, paid off our mortgage, and tucked away enough for a retirement that was comfortable, if not extravagant. It was a good life, one I cherished, but it wasn't the whole story. What no one knew, not even Bart, was that I had been building something else, something just for me. It started in my 30s when the demands of motherhood and work threatened to drown me. I found solace in the delicate art of paper cutting, captivated by how a simple sheet could become something extraordinary with nothing but patience and a steady hand. My early attempts were clumsy, edges ragged and designs uneven, but I practiced during lunch breaks, late nights, any moment I could steal. Over time, my hands learned to dance with precision, turning paper into intricate lace-like patterns that seemed to hold secrets of their own. By my 40s, I'd ventured into wood carving, metalwork, textile design, each new medium a way to pour myself into something tangible, something mine. Our garden shed became my sanctuary, a studio where I disappeared on weekends, losing myself in the rhythm of creation. Bart called it my sanity space, his eyes crinkling with affection, never pressing for details. The children, caught up in their own lives, rarely asked questions, assuming my crafts were just a hobby, a quaint distraction for a woman too busy to dream. But it wasn't just a hobby. It was a passion, a quiet rebellion, and eventually a hidden fortune. I started small, selling pieces at local craft fairs, then reaching out to galleries in nearby towns. I used my vacation days to study under master artisans, telling my family I was visiting my sister in Meridian Heights when I was really learning from renowned craftsmen in Sage Blossom Shores. The money I earned went into a separate account, one I kept secret, not out of deceit, but because I needed something that was wholly mine. I invested in emerging artists whose work spoke to me, building a collection that grew in value as the years passed. By my 50s, that collection was worth several times our household income. By 60, I had become a silent partner in the Velvet Fox Gallery, a venture that multiplied my initial investment threefold. All of this I kept to myself, not because I wanted to hide, but because I believed some parts of a person's soul should remain their own, untouched by the expectations of others. Perhaps, too, I knew my children weren't ready to see beyond their narrow definitions of success, money, status, things that could be measured and displayed. Now, standing in my living room, surrounded by my children's well-meaning but misguided concern, I saw the gap between us more clearly than ever. Imagin spoke again, her voice taking on the polished tone she used for difficult clients. "Mother, we're worried about you, living alone in this big house, surrounded by all this stuff. It's not practical." Thorne chimed in, finally setting his phone down. "What she means is you should consider somewhere more suitable. Ivy Manor has great facilities, and you'd be with people your age." His words were practical, logical, but they carried an undercurrent of dismissal, as if I were a problem to be solved, a box to be checked. Fern, always the most sensitive, shifted uncomfortably, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. "What do you think, Fern?" I asked, my voice gentle but direct. She flinched, caught off guard. I just want you to be happy, Mom." and safe. This house has so many stairs, and after Dad's heart attack, her voice faltered, her eyes dropping to the floor. There it was, the fear beneath their words, raw and unspoken. They had lost their father 3 years ago, his heart giving out without warning, leaving a void that still ached. They were afraid of losing me too, but their fear came wrapped in control, their concern laced with impatience. I softened, understanding their worry, even as it frustrated me. "I hear you," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But before we decide anything about my future, there's something I need to show you. Not today, I'll need time to prepare. Let's say next Saturday, all of you, including Ren. I think he should see this too." They exchanged glances, that silent sibling language that spoke of doubt, of wondering if their aging mother was losing her grip. "Mom, if this is about your crafts," Fern began, her voice hesitant. "It's not just about crafts," I interrupted, my tone sharper than I intended. "It's about legacy, about what 45 years of living really means. Please, just come on Saturday." After some coaxing, they agreed, though their skepticism lingered like a fog. As they left, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Silver hair neatly styled, posture still proud despite the years, eyes alight with a secret I was finally ready to share. For the first time in decades, my heart fluttered with nervous anticipation. My fortune, my art, my investments, my hidden world had always been mine alone, a private joy I guarded fiercely. Sharing it would change everything, and the thought both thrilled and terrified me. That night, I called Mavis Holloway, my oldest friend and the only one who knew the full scope of my secret ventures. "Are you sure, Dora?" she asked, her voice thick with concern. "Once you show them, there's no going back. It'll change how they see you." I sighed, staring at the origami crane on my nightstand. "It's already changing, Mavis. They see me as someone to manage, not respect. Maybe it's time they realize their mother is more than they ever bothered to know." I paused, considering her next question. "And if they're angry you kept this from them? From Bart?" I traced the crane's delicate folds with my finger. Bart knew I had my art. He didn't know the extent, but he respected my need for something of my own. As for the children, they're adults now. They'll have to grapple with the fact that I'm a whole person, not just their mother. After hanging up, I sat in the quiet of my home, the weight of my decisions settling over me. Saturday would be a reckoning, not just for them, but for me. For the first time, I would step fully into the light, revealing the woman I had always been, the one they had never truly seen. With a steadying breath, I turned the knob of the basement door, my heart thrumming with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Each step down the creaky wooden stairs felt like a descent into the core of my hidden self, a journey I'd taken countless times alone, but never with the weight of what was to come. The basement greeted me with its familiar clutter, a maze of cardboard boxes brimming with Christmas ornaments, dusty furniture piled haphazardly, and the miscellaneous relics of a family's life. To anyone else, it was just a storage space, unremarkable and mundane. But I knew better. Tucked behind a wall of overburdened shelves, disguised as part of the room's structure, was a secret door, crafted during a renovation 15 years ago when I dared to carve out a sanctuary for my truest passions. Pushing aside a heavy crate, I revealed the concealed entrance, its existence known only to me. Beyond it lay a climate-controlled chamber, a vault of my life's work, where my most cherished creations and the meticulous records of my achievements were safeguarded. As I stepped inside, the soft hum of the air system welcomed me, and I felt a rush of pride mingled with vulnerability. My fingers grazed the leather-bound portfolios lining a polished shelf, each one a chronicle of my clandestine art acquisitions and sales, a testament to a life spent weaving beauty in the stolen interstices of duty. I lingered there, tracing the embossed spines, my mind awash with memories of late nights spent sketching, negotiating deals, and dreaming in vibrant hues while the world saw only a quiet housewife. Tomorrow I would begin assembling the proof of this hidden existence. By Saturday, I'd be ready to unveil to my children the legacy their unassuming mother had built in the shadows of their childhoods. As I climbed back upstairs, a lightness buoyed my steps, as if the act of deciding to reveal my truth had unburdened me. Whether my children embraced or rejected what I'd done, the veil would finally lift. I wasn't just an aging woman with a penchant for knickknacks. I was an artist, a shrewd investor, a visionary who'd sculpted a remarkable life with patience and precision. In sharing my secret, I hoped they'd see me, not as the mother they thought they knew, but as a woman who dared to dream beyond the confines of her role. The week blurred into a whirlwind of preparation, each task laced with nervous energy. I called Leonora Blackwell, my attorney, whose calm professionalism steadied me as we updated my estate documents to reflect the full scope of my assets. I reached out to Jasper Thornfield, the suave director of the Velvet Fox Gallery, who agreed to arrange the temporary transfer of select pieces, his voice tinged with admiration for the work I'd kept so private. I even contacted Zara Whitlock, my former apprentice, now a celebrated sculptor, whose installations graced European capitals. Her warm encouragement over the phone reignited my resolve. By Friday evening, the basement room had transformed into a gallery of my soul's labor. My finest artworks, intricate paper-cut landscapes, ethereal metal sculptures, vibrant textiles, and delicate wood carvings, were meticulously arranged, each accompanied by documentation of its provenance and value. A polished table displayed financial statements, charting the exponential growth of my investments over decades. Another held a curated collection of newspaper clippings and gallery announcements, all under the pseudonym EK Wisteria, the alias I'd adopted to shield my identity early in my career. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, waking before dawn to the gentle patter of rain against my bedroom window. Slipping downstairs, I brewed a pot of strong tea, its bitter warmth grounding me as I sat at the kitchen table, gazing through rain-streaked guys at the slowly brightening sky. "Well, Bart," I murmured to the empty chair where my late husband once sat, his memory a quiet presence in the room. "Today's the day they learn who I really am. Wish me luck, old friend." As if in answer, the rain ceased, and a beam of early morning sunlight pierced the clouds, bathing the kitchen in a golden glow. A smile tugged at my lips. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready. At exactly 10:01 a.m., the doorbell chimed, sharp and insistent. My heart leapt as I opened the door to find my 3 children on the porch, their faces a tapestry of emotions. Imagin, ever the pragmatist, wore a mask of mild irritation, her arms crossed as if bracing for another of her mother's whims. Thorne, the eldest, looked detached, his gaze flickering toward his phone as if longing to be elsewhere. Fern, my youngest, stood beside her son, little Wren, whose boundless excitement made the moment feel like a grand adventure. "Good morning," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Thank you for coming. Please, come in." They stepped into the living room, unchanged since their last visit, a cozy, cluttered space with the same worn furniture and modest decor they'd grown up with. I'd left it untouched deliberately, wanting the contrast of what they were about to see to hit them like a revelation. "Would anyone like coffee or tea before we start?" I offered, gesturing toward the kitchen. Imagin checked her watch, her impatience palpable. "Mother, we've all carved out time from our schedules for this mysterious announcement of yours. Can we just get to it?" I nodded, unsurprised by her bluntness. "Of course, follow me." Instead of leading them to my craft room or upstairs as they might have expected, I guided them toward the basement door. Thorne's brow furrowed. "The basement? Mom, if this is about Dad's old chemistry stuff or something, It's not," I cut in gently, opening the door and flicking on the light to reveal the unassuming storage space below. "Just trust me for a few more minutes." They trailed me down the stairs, their exchanged glances heavy with skepticism, perhaps even concern for my sanity. At the bottom, I navigated through the clutter to the back wall of shelves and pressed a hidden switch. A soft click echoed, and a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a sleek steel door with a biometric lock. Fern gasped. "Mom, what in the world?" I pressed my thumb to the scanner, and the lock disengaged with a quiet beep. "This," I said, pulling the door open, "is what 45 years of my life really looks like." As they stepped into the hidden room, their expressions shifted from confusion to awe. The space was no basement storage closet. It was a high-end gallery bathed in soft track lighting that illuminated my creations. Paper-cut landscapes captured the rolling hills of Briarwood Glen with breathtaking precision. Metal sculptures seemed to defy gravity, their form dancing in the light. Textile pieces wove intricate narratives in thread and fabric, while wood carvings, so delicate they seemed alive, invited closer inspection. A timeline along one wall traced my artistic evolution, from tentative early works to recent masterpieces. Framed reviews and gallery announcements hung proudly, and glass cases protected smaller pieces, each labeled with its story, creation date, materials, and significance. "I don't understand," Imagin said, her voice uncharacteristically fragile. "You made all this?" I nodded, watching as Ren darted from piece to piece, his eyes wide with wonder. "I did, over many years, in moments stolen between responsibilities. But this is only part of the story." I led them to a conference table at the room's center, where financial documents, investment portfolios, and ownership certificates were neatly arranged. While I was creating art, I was also building something else, something that grew alongside my skills. Thorne, an investment banker, was the first to grasp the implications as he leafed through the papers. "These investments," he looked up, his face ashen. "Are these figures accurate?" "They are," I confirmed. "Verified by my financial advisor yesterday." He struggled to form words. "But this would make you—" "Wealthy," I finished for him. Yes, not just comfortable as you assumed. The art here is valued at approximately $7 million. My investments, including my stake in the Velvet Fox Gallery and partnerships in several artists' careers, bring the total to just over $12 million. A stunned silence enveloped the room. Fern sank into a chair, her hand pressed to her mouth, eyes glistening with unspoken questions. Imagin stood rigid, her carefully curated worldview unraveling. Thorne kept flipping through the documents, as if hoping to find an error. "I don't understand," Imagin finally said, her voice taut. "Why keep this from us? From Dad? Why live in this ordinary house, drive that old car, shop at discount stores when you could have—" "Because it was never about the money," I interrupted softly. "The money was a byproduct, not the goal. And this house isn't ordinary to me, Imagin. It's where I raised you all. It's where I built this life." "But we could have had more," she snapped, her voice cracking with a lifetime's worth of perceived lack. "Private schools, better opportunities." "You had everything you needed," I said firmly. "And you've all thrived, haven't you? Without the weight of inherited wealth or the expectations it brings." Thorne's voice was icy. "That wasn't your decision to make alone. Dad deserved to know. We deserved to know." I nodded, acknowledging their hurt. "Perhaps, but I needed something that was mine alone, something separate from being a wife, a mother, an employee. Can you understand that?" "No," Thorne said flatly. "I can't understand deceiving your family for decades." Fern, who'd been quiet, spoke up, her voice tentative. "I think I might understand a little. It's like having a secret garden, isn't it? A place no one else can touch." Her eyes met mine, searching, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her empathy, her ability to see what her siblings couldn't yet grasp. The air in the room felt thick with unspoken accusations, heavy with the weight of revelations that had just upended decades of family assumptions. Thorne stood rigid, his arms crossed tightly, his jaw set in a way that betrayed his struggle to reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the one standing before him. "It's not the same as tending a garden," he said, his voice clipped, dismissing the very idea with a wave of his hand. "A garden is one thing. Millions of dollars? That's a different beast altogether." His words carried the sting of disbelief, laced with a quiet anger that he couldn't quite mask. He wasn't just shocked. He felt betrayed, as if the foundation of their family had been rewritten without his consent. I had braced myself for this moment, anticipating the storm of emotions that would erupt when I revealed the truth about my art and the fortune it had amassed. I'd imagined their wide-eyed shock, the sharp pang of betrayal, the mental recalibration, as they sifted through memories of our family life, now colored by this new dazzling lens. But what I hadn't prepared for, what caught me off guard like a sudden gust of wind, was Ren's reaction. My 10-year-old grandson had been silent while the adults' voices clashed, his small frame moving quietly among the pieces in my private gallery. His eyes, wide with curiosity, lingered on a paper-cut landscape that captured Wisteria Court through the shifting seasons. The delicate layers of paper seemed to breathe with life, each cut creating a depth that felt almost impossible, as if time itself had been folded into the work. Grandma, Wren's voice broke through the tension, clear and unburdened by the adults' grievances. Did you make this with your hands? His question was so earnest, so untouched by the weight of the moment, that it felt like a lifeline. I stepped closer to him, my heart softening as I stood by his side. I did, Wren, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. It took me nearly a year to finish. His eyes traced every detail of the piece, his small fingers hovering just above the surface as if afraid to disturb its magic. It's like you trapped time in the paper, he said, his voice full of wonder. You can see everything all at once. Winter, spring, summer, fall, all right there. He looked up at me, his face glowing with admiration. That's magic. For the first time that evening, a smile broke across my face, warm and unforced. The heaviness in the room seemed to lift, if only for a moment. Not magic, I said softly, just patience, practice, and a whole lot of love for what I do. Wren's eyes sparkled with excitement. Can you teach me? He asked, his voice brimming with eagerness. Before I could answer, Imagin's sharp voice cut through the moment like a blade. Wren, that's enough, she snapped, her tone clipped and final. This isn't the time. The light in Wren's face dimmed, his shoulders slumping under the weight of her dismissal. Something inside me hardened, a quiet resolve taking root. This was exactly why I had kept my art a secret for so long. This reflex to diminish, to reduce anything that couldn't be neatly quantified into dollars or status. I placed a protective hand on Wren's shoulder, my voice firm but calm. Actually, Imagin, I think this is exactly the time. Wren sees what the rest of you are blind to. This isn't about money or deception or what you think you're owed. It's about passion, dedication, in building something meaningful, something that lasts. I stepped into the center of the room, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. For years, I had carried the weight of my secret, but now, surrounded by the evidence of my life's work, I felt stronger than I had in decades. I didn't bring you here to apologize, I said, my voice steady and clear. I didn't bring you here to start bankrolling your lives. I brought you here because last week, you looked at me and saw nothing but an old woman with trinkets. You saw 45 years of my work and dismissed it as nothing. Well, I gestured to the gallery around us, the walls alive with the intricate beauty of my creations. This is what I have to show for my life. This is my legacy. Not just the money, though that's real enough, but the work itself, the mastery, the quiet, consistent devotion to something bigger than myself. Thorne shook his head, his expression unyielding. You still should have told us, he said, his voice low but firm. You should have told Dad. His words carried a mix of hurt and accusation, as if my silence had been a personal betrayal of his father's memory. I met his gaze, my own steady. Perhaps, I admitted, but I'm telling you now, and what matters is what you do with this truth moving forward. The room was thick with tension, decades of unspoken assumptions and family dynamics now thrown into disarray. I had known this wouldn't be easy, but standing there, surrounded by the tangible proof of my hidden life, I felt no regret, only a strange, unexpected lightness, as if a burden I'd carried for years had finally lifted. I'll give you all some time to process this, I said gently. Feel free to look around, ask questions. When you're ready, we can talk about what comes next. I turned to leave, but Imogen's voice stopped me in my tracks. What exactly do you expect to happen next, Mother? She asked, her tone brittle, each word edged with barely contained anger. You dropped this bombshell on us, and then what? We're supposed to celebrate your secrecy? Her words were a challenge, her eyes blazing with a mix of hurt and defiance. I turned back to face her, meeting her gaze with a calm resolve that surprised even me. No, Imagin, I said. I expect you to see me, really see me, for the first time. Not just as your mother, but as a person with passions and accomplishments of my own. What you do with that is up to you. With that, I left them in the gallery, the weight of my life's work surrounding them like a silent witness. I climbed the stairs to the kitchen, the familiar creak of the steps grounding me as I moved. I put the kettle on, the soft hum of it filling the quiet as I tried to steady my racing thoughts. From below, I could hear raised voices. Thorne and Imagin locked in a heated debate, their words muffled but sharp. Fern's softer voice wove through, trying to mediate as she always did, her gentle diplomacy a constant in our family's storms. But beneath the discord, another sound reached me. Wren's bright, excited exclamations as he discovered each new piece in the gallery. That sound, so pure and untainted by resentment, sparked a quiet hope in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, one member of the next generation would understand what I had spent my life building. Time stretched on as I sat in the kitchen, nursing a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The muffled sounds from the basement faded, replaced by the slow, deliberate tread of footsteps on the stairs. Imagin appeared first, her face composed into the careful neutrality she wore like armor in her high-stakes business dealings. Thorne followed, still clutching one of my financial portfolios, his expression caught somewhere between calculation and bewilderment, as if he couldn't decide whether to be impressed or offended. Fern came last, guiding Wren, whose eyes still shone with uncontained excitement. "Grandma, you're famous!" Wren burst out, rushing toward me with a grin that lit up the room. "I saw your other name, on those fancy papers." I laughed softly, ruffling his hair. "Not famous exactly," I said. "Just known in certain circles." Fern's voice was quiet, almost reverent, as she spoke. "EK Wisteria," she said, her eyes searching mine. "All this time, those pieces I loved at the Velvet Fox Gallery, they were yours." I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. "Some of them, yes." Imagin cleared her throat, her tone all business. "Mother, we need to discuss the practical side of this," she said. "Tax considerations, estate planning." I cut her off gently but firmly. "Imagin, I've been managing these affairs for decades. My finances and legal matters are in order." She pressed on, undeterred. "But now that we know, we should be involved." "No," I said, my voice sharper than I intended, surprising even myself. "My fortune remains under my control. I showed you this not to invite management, but to correct your assumptions about my life." Thorne's eyes narrowed, his voice low and pointed. "Then why tell us at all? Why not let us keep believing you had nothing to show for your life? What was the point of this?" It was a fair question, one I'd wrestled with for days. Why now, after decades of silence? "Because I'm tired," I said at last, the words spilling out with a raw honesty that surprised me. "Tired of being underestimated, tired of being seen as an extension of your father or an aging burden. I wanted you to know who I am, who I've always been before it's too late." Imogen's voice was sharp, edged with sarcasm. "And who is that exactly? EK Wisteria, the secret millionaire artist? Or Odora Kingsley, the mother who hid her wealth from her family?" Her words cut deep, but I refused to let them shake me. "Both," I said simply. "Neither. I'm a woman who built something meaningful alongside the life you saw. The question is whether you can accept that." Fern stepped forward, her hand resting lightly on my arm, her voice soft but steady. "Mom, this is a lot to take in. You're asking us to rethink everything we thought we knew about you." I shook my head, correcting her gently. "Not rethink, Fern. Expand. Everything you knew about me was true. I was devoted to my mom, to your father, to all of you. I just had another side you didn't see." Thorne's voice was heavy with frustration. "Dad should have known," he said. "He was your husband." I chose my words carefully, feeling the weight of their father's memory in the room. "Your father knew I was an artist," I said. "He knew I sold pieces from time to time. He respected my need for that space. Did he know the full extent of my success? Or my investments? No, because that part of my life was mine alone." "That's a lie of omission," Imagin said flatly, her eyes cold. I met her gaze, unflinching. "Or maybe it's called keeping a piece of myself in a marriage. Would you have preferred I vanished entirely into the role of wife and mother, Imagin? Would that have been better?" She fell silent, her expression unreadable, and I knew my words had struck a chord she wasn't ready to face. Wren, who had been listening with growing confusion, suddenly piped up, his voice cutting through the tension. I think Grandma's art is amazing, he said, his tone defiant. And if she made all that money by herself, isn't that a good thing? His words were a balm, simple and true, and I smiled at him, my heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Wren, I said. I think it's a good thing, too. A heavy silence settled over the kitchen, the weight of my revelation pressing down on us all. My children were grappling not just with the truth of my fortune, but with the realization that they had built their image of me on half-truths, assumptions that had never accounted for the fullness of who I was. I have a proposition, I said at last, breaking the silence. Instead of going in circles, I'd like you to take some time to reflect. In 1 month, I'm holding an exhibition at the Velvet Fox Gallery. My first under my own name, not my pseudonym. I'd like you all to come. In the meantime, I'm going away for a few weeks. Going away? Fern echoed, her brow furrowing. Where? I smiled, feeling a spark of anticipation at the thought. To Sage Blossom Shores, I said. I've rented a cottage there to finish some pieces for the exhibition. ZKA Artifact ED 7B9F 8A12 4E5B 4F1D 9E3C 8B7F63D Unveil title. Rewritten story. Undao content type text markdown. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, heavy with the weight of revelations that had just turned decades of family assumptions upside down. Thorne stood rigid, arms crossed tightly, his jaw clenched in a way that betrayed his struggle to reconcile the mother he thought he knew with the one standing before him. It's not like tending a garden, Ma, he said, his voice sharp, dismissing the notion with a flick of his hand. A garden is one thing. Millions of dollars? That's an entirely different matter. His words carried a sting of disbelief, laced with a quiet anger he couldn't fully conceal. He wasn't just shocked. He felt betrayed, as if the very foundation of their family had been rewritten without his permission. I had braced myself for this moment, knowing the storm of emotions that would erupt when I revealed the truth about my art and the fortune it had quietly amassed. I'd pictured their wide-eyed shock, the sharp pang of betrayal, the mental recalibration as they sifted through memories of our family life, now seen through a dazzling new lens. But what I hadn't anticipated, what hit me like a sudden gust, was Wren's response. My 10-year-old grandson had been silent while the adults' voices clashed, his small frame moving quietly among the pieces in my private gallery. His eyes, wide with curiosity, lingered on a paper-cut landscape that captured Wisteria Court through the shifting seasons. The delicate layers of paper seemed to breathe, each cut creating a depth that felt almost impossible, as if time itself had been folded into the work. Grandma, Wren's voice cut through the tension, clear and unburdened by the adults' grievances. Did you make this with your hands? His question was so earnest, so untouched by the weight of the moment, that it felt like a lifeline. I stepped closer, my heart softening as I stood beside him. I did, Wren, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. It took me nearly a year to finish. His eyes traced every detail, his small fingers hovering just above the surface as if afraid to disturb its magic. It's like you trapped time in the paper, he said, his voice full of wonder. You can see everything all at once. Winter, spring, summer, fall. All right there. He looked up at me, his face glowing with admiration. That's magic. For the first time that evening, a smile broke across my face, warm and unforced. The heaviness in the room seemed to lift, if only for a moment. Not magic, I said softly, just patience, practice, and a whole lot of love for what I do. Wren's eyes sparkled with excitement. Can you teach me? He asked, his voice brimming with eagerness. Before I could answer, Imagin's sharp voice sliced through the moment like a blade. Wren, that's enough, she snapped, her tone clipped and final. This isn't the time. The light in Wren's face dimmed, his shoulders slumping under the weight of her dismissal. Something inside me hardened, a quiet resolve taking root. This was exactly why I had kept my art a secret for so long. This reflex to diminish, to reduce anything that couldn't be neatly quantified into dollars or status. I placed a protective hand on Wren's shoulder, my voice firm but calm. Actually, Imagin, I think this is exactly the time. Wren sees what the rest of you are blind to. This isn't about money or deception or what you think you're owed. It's about passion, dedication, in building something meaningful, something that lasts. I stepped into the center of the room, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. For years, I had carried the weight of my secret, but now, surrounded by the evidence of my life's work, I felt stronger than I had in decades. I didn't bring you here to apologize, I said, my voice steady and clear. I didn't bring you here to start bankrolling your lives. I brought you here because last week you looked at me and saw nothing but an old woman with trinkets. You saw 45 years of my work and dismissed it as a nothing. Well, I gestured to the gallery around us, the walls alive with the intricate beauty of my creations. This is what I have to show for my life. This is my legacy. Not just the money, though, that's real enough, but the work itself, the mastery, the quiet, consistent devotion to something bigger than myself. Thorne shook his head, his expression unyielding. You still should have told us, he said, his voice low but firm. You should have told Dad. His words carried a mix of hurt and accusation, as if my silence had been a personal betrayal of his father's memory. I met his gaze, my own steady. Perhaps, I admitted, but I'm telling you now, and what matters is what you do with this truth moving forward. The room was thick with tension, decades of unspoken assumptions and family dynamics now thrown into disarray. I had known this wouldn't be easy, but standing there, surrounded by the tangible proof of my hidden life, I felt no regret, only a strange, unexpected lightness, as if a burden I'd carried for years had finally lifted. I'll give you all some time to process this, I said gently. Feel free to look around, ask questions. When you're ready, we can talk about what comes next. I turned to leave, but Imogen's voice stopped me in my tracks. What exactly do you expect to happen next, Mother? She asked, her tone brittle, each word edged with barely contained anger. You dropped this bombshell on us, and then what? We're supposed to celebrate your secrecy? Her words were a challenge, her eyes blazing with a mix of hurt and defiance. I turned back to face her, meeting her gaze with a calm resolve that surprised even me. No, Imagin, I said. I expect you to see me, really see me, for the first time. Not just as your mother, but as a person with passions and accomplishments of my own. What you do with that is up to you. With that, I left them in the gallery, the weight of my life's work surrounding them like a silent witness. I climbed the stairs to the kitchen, the familiar creak of the steps grounding me as I moved. I put the kettle on, the soft hum of it filling the quiet as I tried to steady my racing thoughts. From below, I could hear raised voices, Thorne and Imagin locked in a heated debate, their words muffled but sharp. Fern's softer voice wove through, trying to mediate as she always did, her gentle diplomacy a constant in our family's storms. But beneath the discord, another sound reached me, Wren's bright, excited exclamations as he discovered each new piece in the gallery. That sound, so pure and untainted by resentment, sparked a quiet hope in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, one member of the next generation would understand what I had spent my life building. Time stretched on as I sat in the kitchen, nursing a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The muffled sounds from the basement faded, replaced by the slow, deliberate tread of footsteps on the stairs. Imagin appeared first, her face composed into the careful neutrality she wore like armor in her high-stakes business dealings. Thorne followed, still clutching one of my financial portfolios, his expression caught somewhere between calculation and bewilderment, as if he couldn't decide whether to be impressed or offended. Fern came last, guiding Wren, whose eyes still shone with uncontained excitement. "Grandma, you're famous!" Wren burst out, rushing toward me with a grin that lit up the room. "I saw your other name, on those fancy papers." I laughed softly, ruffling his hair. "Not famous exactly," I said, "just known in certain circles." Fern's voice was quiet, almost reverent, as she spoke. "EK Wisteria," she said, her eyes searching mine. "All this time, those pieces I loved at the Velvet Fox Gallery, they were yours." I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. "Some of them, yes." Imagin cleared her throat, her tone all business. "Mother, we need to discuss the practical side of this," she said. "Tax considerations, estate planning." I cut her off gently but firmly. Imagin, I've been managing these affairs for decades. My finances and legal matters are in order. She pressed on, undeterred. But now that we know, we should be involved. No, I said, my voice sharper than I intended, surprising even myself. My fortune remains under my control. I showed you this not to invite management, but to correct your assumptions about my life. Thorne's eyes narrowed, his voice low and pointed. Then why tell us at all? Why not let us keep believing you had nothing to show for your life? What was the point of this? It was a fair question, one I'd wrestled with for days. Why now, after decades of silence? Because I'm tired, I said at last, the words spilling out with a raw honesty that surprised me. Tired of being underestimated, tired of being seen as an extension of your father or an aging burden. I wanted you to know who I am, who I've always been, before it's too late. Imogen's voice was sharp, edged with sarcasm. And who is that exactly? EK Wisteria, the secret millionaire artist? Or Odora Kingsley, the mother who hid her wealth from her family? Her words cut deep, but I refused to let them shake me. Both, I said simply. Neither. I'm a woman who built something meaningful alongside the life you saw. The question is whether you can accept that. Fern stepped forward, her hand resting lightly on my arm, her voice sharp off but steady. Mom, this is a lot to take in. You're asking us to rethink everything we thought we knew about you. I shook my head, correcting her gently. Not rethink, Fern, expand. Everything you knew about me was true. I was devoted to my job, to your father, to all of you. I just had another side you didn't see. Thorne's voice was heavy with frustration. Dad should have known, he said. He was your husband. I chose my words carefully, feeling the weight of their father's memory in the room. Your father knew I was an artist, I said. He knew I sold pieces from time to time. He respected my need for that space. Did he know the full extent of my success or my investments? No, because that part of my life was mine alone. That's a lie of omission, Imagin said flatly, her eyes cold. I met her gaze unflinching. Or maybe it's called keeping a piece of myself in a marriage. Would you have preferred I vanished entirely into the role of wife and mother, Imagin? Would that have been better? She fell silent, her expression unreadable, and I knew my words had struck a chord she wasn't ready to face. Wren, who had been listening with growing confusion, suddenly piped up, his voice cutting through the tension. I think Grandma's art is amazing, he said, his tone defiant. And if she made all of that money by herself, isn't that a good thing? His words were a balm, simple and true, and I smiled at him, my heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Wren, I said. I think it's a good thing, too. A heavy silence settled over the kitchen, the weight of my revelation pressing down on us all. My children were grappling not just with the truth of my fortune, but with the realization that they had built their image of me on half-truths, assumptions that had never accounted for the fullness of who I was. I have a proposition, I said at last, breaking the silence. Instead of going in circles, I'd like you to take some time to reflect. In 1 month, I'm holding an exhibition at the Velvet Fox Gallery, my first under my own name, not my pseudonym. I'd like you all to come. In the meantime, I'm going away for a few weeks. Going away? Fern echoed, her brow furrowing. Where? I smiled, feeling a spark of anticipation at the thought. To Sage Blossom Shores, I said. I've rented a cottage there to finish some pieces for the exhibition. For years, I lived 2 lives, each carefully compartmentalized, each demanding a different version of myself. As a mother, I was Dora, steady, reliable, the anchor of a family that leaned on me through joy and loss. As EK Wisteria, I was an artist, pouring my soul into intricate paper cuttings that captured the beauty and complexity of the world. The secrecy wasn't born of shame, but of necessity, a way to carve out space for my art in a life already full of obligations. When I revealed my dual identity to my children, Imagin, Thorne, and Fern, their reactions mirrored the spectrum of human emotion. Imogen's worry stemmed from her protective instincts, her mind racing to the risks of my solitary travels. Thorne's anger flared from a sense of betrayal, the realization that I'd hidden so much behind the excuse of visiting my sister. Fern's curiosity, though, was a quiet flame, her eyes wide with the dawning understanding that her mother was more than she'd ever known. The decision to step fully into my identity as EK Wisteria felt like crossing a threshold into uncharted territory. Yet with each step, I felt lighter, as if I were shedding decades of weight. At Sage Blossom Shores, in the cottage that had long been my refuge, I began work on a paper cutting that would become the heart of my exhibition. It traced a woman's life, my life, through layers of symbols, from the constraints of youth to the freedom of age, a visual testament to my journey toward wholeness. When a journalist's inquiries threatened to expose my story prematurely, I felt the sting of betrayal, suspecting one of my children had broken their promise. But in the end, it was Fern who told my story, not out of malice, but love. Her article in the Meridian Heights Chronicle was a tribute, celebrating the courage it took to build two parallel lives, one for family, one for art. As I read her words, I wept, not for the secrecy that had defined me, but for the love that had seen me through it all. My daughter Fern, who had once dreamed of a career in journalism before pivoting to the fast-paced world of marketing, had written an article that captured the essence of my life with a clarity that took my breath away. She didn't sensationalize or judge. Instead, she wove together a tapestry of perspectives. Mine, Jasper's, the collectors who cherished my creations, and even Mavis's, that revealed a portrait so authentic it felt like looking into a mirror for the first time. Her words didn't expose me in the way I'd feared for so long. They illuminated me, casting light on the shadows I'd kept hidden, not out of shame, but out of a fierce desire to protect the delicate balance of my dual existence. At the article's close, Fern included a personal note, her voice as a daughter shining through. EK Wisteria will reveal her true identity at an exhibition opening on April 15th at the Velvet Fox Gallery. As her daughter, I'm honored to invite the public to witness not only the unveiling of new artworks, but also the emergence of a woman who has crafted her masterpiece, a life lived on her own terms. I sat on the porch of my seaside cottage, the article resting open on my lap, its pages fluttering faintly in the salty breeze. The rhythmic crash of waves against the shore mirrored the emotions surging within me, tumultuous yet grounding. Tomorrow I would return to Briarwood Glen, where the weight of my choices awaited, the exhibition, the public unveiling of my identity, and the ongoing intricate dance of rebuilding trust with my children. But in this fleeting moment, I felt an unfamiliar serenity settle over me. The turning point hadn't come when I confessed my secret to my children, nor when Fern's article reached the world. It arrived quietly in my decision to finally embrace every facet of myself. Odora Kingsley in EK Wisteria, mother and artist, caretaker and creator. No more hiding, no more compartments. Just me, whole and unapologetic, ready to step into whatever came next with courage. The drive back to Briarwood Glen stretched long and winding, giving me ample time to reflect on the whirlwind of events that had unfolded since that fateful afternoon when Wren, my curious grandson, accidentally knocked over my box of treasures. In mere weeks, the carefully constructed walls I'd maintained for decades had crumbled, leaving me standing on the threshold of a new reality. My dual identities, once so meticulously separated, were now merging into a singular, authentic whole. As I pulled into my driveway, my heart skipped a beat at the sight of an unfamiliar car parked at the curb. Sleek, expensive, with Meridian Heights license plates glinting in the late afternoon sun. For a moment, dread gripped me. Had a journalist tracked me down, hungry for a scoop? Then the driver's door swung open, and Imagin, my eldest daughter, stepped out. She stood tall and composed beside her charm, her expression guarded, her posture radiating the cool professionalism that defined her. We hadn't spoken since the day I revealed my secret, and Fern's article had undoubtedly stirred the already turbulent waters between us. "Mother," she said, her tone formal, almost clipped, "I hope your trip was productive." I matched her formality, though my heart ached at the distance in her voice. "It was, thank you. Would you like to come in?" She gave a curt nod and followed me into the house, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. Inside, Imagin remained standing in the living room, her arms crossed, her body rigid as though bracing for a storm. Without preamble, she said, "I read Fern's article." I set my bags down, meeting her gaze. "And?" She paused, her lips pressing into a thin line as she chose her words with the precision of a lawyer. "I'm still processing it. I came to tell you that, Regardless of my personal feelings about your choices, I plan to attend your exhibition. Thorne and his wife will be there too." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken conflict. I studied her, my daughter, so composed, so controlled, yet I could see the storm brewing in her eyes, a flicker of hurt and confusion beneath her polished exterior. "Thank you," I said softly. "That means a great deal to me." Imagin shifted her weight, her professional facade slipping just a fraction. "I also came to ask something. Ren has been asking about your art nonstop since our visit. He wants to learn." I thought, perhaps. Her voice trailed off, and I felt a warmth bloom in my chest at the thought of my grandson's curiosity. "I'd be delighted to teach him," I said, my voice softening. "Whenever you'd like to bring him over." She nodded almost reluctantly. "He'll be pleased." A long silence followed, thick with the weight of all we hadn't said. Then unexpectedly she spoke again. "Mother, I want you to know that while I don't agree with how you handled this, keeping secrets from Dad, from us, I do admire what you've accomplished." Coming from her, this grudging acknowledgement felt like a seismic shift, a rare glimpse into the heart she so carefully kept guarded. I smiled, recognizing the olive branch for what it was. "Thank you, Imagin. Perhaps one day you'll understand why I made the choices." She straightened her jacket, her moment of vulnerability passing as she retreated back into her armor. "Perhaps. In the meantime, Ren is free this Saturday morning, if that works for his lesson." And with that, she was gone, leaving behind a fragile thread of connection that felt like the first step towards something new. After she left, I lingered in the living room, surrounded by the familiar possessions that had once been dismissed as mere clutter. Now even Imagin was beginning to see them, and me, with fresh eyes. It was a small victory, but it was a start. The weeks leading up to the exhibition were a blur of activity. With my secret now partially public, I no longer needed to compartmentalize my time. Mornings found me at the Velvet Fox Gallery with Jasper, arranging the exhibition space and fine-tuning the catalog, our conversations flowing with a shared anticipation of the unveiling ahead. Afternoons were spent in my basement studio, a space I decided to keep as my creative haven despite its discovery. The familiar hum of scissors and the scent of paper grounded me as I poured myself into my work, each piece a reflection of the woman I was becoming, whole, unapologetic, free. On Saturdays, true to Imagin's word, Ren arrived for his art lessons. My grandson was a revelation, his small fingers nimble and his imagination boundless as he explored the world of paper art. During our third session, as he carefully worked on a simple cutout design, he looked up with the earnest curiosity only a 10-year-old possesses and asked, "Grandma, why didn't you tell anyone you were famous? Didn't you want people to know you made beautiful things?" His question caught me off guard, and I paused, searching for a way to explain the complexities of my choices to his young mind. "Sometimes, Ren," I began, "people need to keep parts of themselves private, not because they're ashamed, but because those parts are precious, like a special treasure you want to protect." He frowned, his brow furrowing as he focused on his cutting. "But now everyone will know it at your show, right? Aren't you scared?" His honesty disarmed me, and I admitted, "A little, but I'm also excited. It feels like the right time to share this part of myself with everyone." He looked up, his expression serious. "Mom's still mad at you, but she said your art is really valuable. She said you could have bought us a vacation house on the beach if you'd wanted to." I stifled a smile at this glimpse into Imagin's private grumblings. "I suppose I could have, but I chose to invest in art instead, my own and others. That's the wonderful thing about growing up, Ren. You get to decide what matters most to you." He nodded, his eyes bright with certainty. "I think your art matters most. To you." "My art is very important to me," I agreed, "but so is my family, including you." "You see," he said, beaming. His smile widened, and he returned to his work with renewed enthusiasm, his focus unbroken. Watching him, I felt a profound sense of continuity, a quiet hope that my artistic legacy might live on, not just in galleries or collections, but in the hands of my grandson. That evening, Fern stopped by with takeout from the Periwinkle Patisserie, our cherished spot for comfort food. As we sat at the kitchen table, savoring the familiar flavors, She finally asked the question I knew had been weighing on her since she wrote her article. Was I right, Mom, about why you kept your art separate? About it being an act of courage rather than deception? Her voice was raw, her eyes searching mine for confirmation. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Largely, yes, but the truth is always messier than a single article can capture, even one as beautiful as yours. She leaned forward, her journalist's instinct kicking in. I want to understand, Mom. Not just for the article, but for me, for us. I took a deep breath, gathering the words I'd never fully articulated before, even to myself. When I married your father, it was a different time. Women were expected to be wives and mothers above all else, their dreams and ambitions relegated to the sidelines. I loved your father with all my heart, and I wanted our family more than anything. But there was this fire inside me, this need to create, to build something that was wholly mine. I paused, the memories flooding back. At first, my art was just a hobby, a quiet escape from the demands of daily life. But as it began to gain traction, as collectors started seeking out my work and galleries showed interest, I faced a crossroads. I could bring my success into our family life, but that would have changed everything. Your father might have felt overshadowed. You children might have felt pressure or expectations I didn't want you to carry. Or I could keep it separate, letting each world thrive on its own terms. Fern's voice was soft, almost reverent, and you chose separation. I nodded, not out of shame or deceit, but to protect both worlds. My family life could remain untouched by the complexities of my artistic success, and my art could grow without being defined by my roles as a wife or mother. Wasn't it exhausting? She asked, her brow furrowing. Living two lives like that? I smiled, a bittersweet chuckle escaping me. Sometimes, but it was also exhilarating, like carrying a secret superpower. In my everyday life, I was Odora, the office manager, the mom who packed lunches and cheered at your games. But in my art world, I was EK Wisteria, an artist whose work was respected, whose vision was valued. Both were true, both were me, just different sides of the same coin. Fern nodded slowly, her eyes glistening with understanding, and in that moment I felt a connection with her that transcended words, a shared recognition of the woman I had always been, now stepping boldly into the light. At 68, I stood at the edge of a revelation, my heart a tapestry of nerves and resolve. For decades, I had lived as two women, Odora Kingsley, the meticulous office manager, devoted mother, and doting grandmother, and EK Wisteria, the enigmatic artist whose intricate paper sculptures captivated collectors and critics alike. The separation had been deliberate, a quiet rebellion against a world that demanded I fit neatly into prescribed roles. But now, as the years pressed against me, I felt an urgent need to weave these threads of my identity into a single, vibrant whole. I didn't want to leave this world divided, my truth scattered like unfinished sketches. I wanted my family, Fern, Thorne, Imagin, and little Wren, to see me fully, to know the depths I'd kept hidden, not out of shame, but out of a fierce need to protect something sacred. The night before my exhibition at the Velvet Fox Gallery, sleep eluded me. I sat in my studio, surrounded by the remnants of my secret life, paper cuts and folds that whispered stories of late nights and stolen moments. My fingers traced the delicate edges of a piece that hadn't made it to the gallery, each crease a testament to years of quiet creation. What would it feel like to step out of the shadows as EK Wisteria, to let Odora Kingsley claim her? Would I lose the private sanctuary of my art? Or would I gain something greater, a life without compartments? My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. Mavis, my oldest friend, had texted, "Get some sleep, you old trailblazer. Tomorrow you rewrite your story." I smiled at her words. I wasn't aiming to change the world, only to become whole. Yet there was something defiant, almost revolutionary, in standing at my age and proclaiming that I was more than the sum of my roles, that I had built something extraordinary with my own hands and heart. Morning arrived with a rush of adrenaline. I dressed with intention, choosing an indigo suit that spoke to the professional Odora, tailored, precise, dependable, paired with handcrafted silver jewelry from an artist I'd mentored, a nod to my creative soul. My hair, silver and long, I left loose, a quiet rebellion against the practical style I'd worn for decades. It cascaded over my shoulders, a statement of freedom. Jasper, my steadfast gallery partner, had arranged a car to take me to the Velvet Fox. As we pulled up, my breath caught at the sight of a crowd spilling onto the sidewalk. Collectors, critics, and curious locals drawn by Fern's article and the mystery of EK Wisteria's identity. "Ready?" Jasper asked, extending his arm. "As I'll ever be, I replied, my voice steadier than my racing heart. Inside the gallery was a living chronicle of my life. My works, spanning decades, were arranged chronologically, each piece a chapter in my artistic evolution. The centerpiece, my paper autobiography titled Integration, hung on the main wall, its layers illuminated to reveal the intricate dance of light and shadow. Beside each sculpture, a small card offered not just the title and medium, but a glimpse into my world at the time of its creation, moments of loss and quiet triumph. I whispered to Jasper, "It's perfect." He grinned, his eyes twinkling. "You're perfect. Now go hide until I introduce you. Your family's already here." Peering into the gallery, I saw them. Imagin, my pragmatic daughter, standing near the entrance, her posture rigid with curiosity. Thorne, my skeptical son, studying an early piece with his wife murmuring beside him. Fern, my journalist daughter, animatedly chatting with a reporter. And Wren, my grandson, darting between displays with uncontained excitement. They had come just as they promised, and my heart swelled with gratitude and trepidation. At 7:00, Jasper clinked a glass, silencing the room's hum. "Distinguished guests, collectors, members of the press," he began, his voice warm with pride. "Welcome to a historic moment, the unveiling of EK Wisteria. For over 30 years, this artist's work has mesmerized us with its precision, emotional resonance, and technical brilliance. The reclusive EK Wisteria, rarely seen and never photographed, has been a figure of intrigue. Tonight, that mystery ends. It is my honor to introduce the woman behind the name, a woman who has crafted an extraordinary legacy while living fully as a professional, wife, mother, and grandmother." My pulse thundered as he paused, his gaze sweeping the captivated crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present EK Wisteria, Ms. Odora Kingsley." The room erupted in applause as I stepped forward, cameras flashing like stars in a storm. Critics who had dissected my work for years stared, stunned at the silver-haired woman before them. But my eyes sought only my family. Fern glowed with pride, her smile a beacon of love. Thorne's expression softened, a grudging respect flickering as his wife whispered questions. Imagin, my ever-critical daughter, stood frozen, one hand over her mouth, tears carving silent paths down her cheeks. I took the microphone from Jasper, my hands trembling only slightly. "Thank you for being here," I began, my voice steadying with each word. "For years, I've lived what might seem like two lives. Odora Kingsley, the office manager and mother, and EK Wisteria, the artist. But they were never separate. They were two facets of the same woman, the same heart, the same dreams." I gestured to integration behind me. "This piece is my journey toward wholeness. Each layer reflects a part of me, family, career, art, growth, all woven together, all vital to who I am. I stand here not as someone who was hiding, but as someone who was becoming. It took me 68 years to reach this moment, and I'm grateful to share it with you, especially my family, who are seeing me, perhaps for the first time, in my entirety." As I spoke, I saw nods of recognition, especially from women my age, their eyes reflecting their own divided lives. The speech continued with thanks and insights into my process, but those opening words were my truth, my claim to a life too complex for boxes. When I finished, journalists, collectors, and patrons swarmed me, their questions a whirlwind of curiosity and admiration. I answered with grace, but my heart kept pulling toward my family, waiting patiently at the crowd's edge. When I reached them, Fern enveloped me in a fierce hug, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." Thorne gave a stiff nod, but his eyes held a new respect, a quiet acknowledgement of the moment's weight. Imagin, though, undid me. She stepped forward, her usual composure fraying. "Mom," she said, her voice thick, I think I get it now. It wasn't about fame or money, was it? It was about having something that was yours, something the world couldn't take. Tears pricked my eyes at her words. So precise, so true. Yes, I whispered. Exactly that. She nodded, years of distance melting away. Your work, it's like seeing your soul. I've been to countless galleries, but nothing compares to this. I smiled, my heart full. That's what it is, my soul in paper and light. Ren tugged at my sleeve, his eyes wide. Grandma, everyone's talking about you. That lady said you're a visionary, and that man called you the greatest paper artist ever. Are you famous now? I laughed, ruffling his hair. Maybe a little in some circles, but I'm still your grandma who burns cookies and misplaces her glasses. He grinned. Can I tell my friends? Of course, I said, my heart light. As the evening unfolded, I moved effortlessly between worlds. Artist, grandmother, professional, no longer needing to keep them apart. The transformation I'd begun by revealing my secret was complete, a public claiming of my whole self. Later, as the crowd thinned, I stood before integration, studying its layers, each one a piece of my journey. A presence beside me made me turn. Vivica Sterling, my former colleague, stood there, her eyes wide with awe. Odora, she said softly, I never knew. All those years, and I never saw this part of you. I smiled, at peace. I wasn't ready to show it, but now I am. In the quiet hum of the evening, as the last visitors filtered out of the gallery, Viva's voice cut through the stillness, laced with a curious blend of awe and something sharper, almost envious. Odora, she said, her eyes fixed on me with an intensity that felt both familiar and unsettling. All these years working side by side, and I never once suspected you were anything but the dependable office manager. So, ordinary. Her words carried a sting, though I could tell she hadn't meant to wound. I smiled, letting the comment slide like water off a leaf. Sometimes, Viva, the most remarkable treasures are tucked away in the plainest wrapping. Her gaze shifted to the sculpture before us, its intricate curves catching the soft gallery light. She tilted her head, studying it as if it might reveal the secrets I'd kept for so long. How much for this one? She asked, her tone brisk, as if everything could be quantified. It's not for sale, I replied, my voice steady but warm. This one's mine. It stays with me. Her brow furrowed, a flicker of her old competitive edge sparking in her eyes. Everything has a price, Odora. Not everything, I said softly, my words carrying the weight of years spent learning this truth. Some things, like the journey this piece holds, are beyond any dollar amount. Viva shook her head, her expression a mix of disbelief and frustration, as if my refusal to assign a value was a personal affront. She drifted toward the other artworks, ones with price tags she could negotiate, her heels clicking faintly on the polished floor. I watched her go, not with triumph, but with a quiet, unexpected compassion. Viva, with her relentless pursuit of wealth and status, might never grasp the riches I'd found. Not in money, but in the deep well of self-knowledge, the joy of creation, the hard-won integrity that now defined me. As the exhibition closed for the night, my family gathered around me, their presence a warm anchor in the sea of my thoughts. They were no longer distant figures puzzled by the woman I'd hidden from them, but witnesses to the whole of me, flawed, complex, and finally whole. We weren't fully healed, not yet. There were still conversations to navigate, old wounds to mend, adjustments to make. But we had turned a page, begun a new chapter together, one where I no longer needed to compartmentalize my heart. Shall we go home? Fern asked, her voice soft but steady as she offered her arm. Home. The word landed differently now, no longer a place where I tucked away pieces of myself to fit others' expectations. It was a space where I could exist fully, unapologetically. I took her arm, feeling the warmth of her presence, and nodded. Yes, let's go home. 6 months later, life had settled into a rhythm that felt both new and deeply right. My unveiling as EK Wisteria, the artist I'd kept hidden for so long, had sent ripples through my world, touching not just my own life but those around me in ways I hadn't anticipated. The basement studio, once a clandestine refuge, had been transformed into a proper workspace. its large windows flooding the room with natural light, specialized lamps casting a glow over my tools. The hidden door that had once guarded my secret now stood proudly open, a symbol of the integration I'd fought so hard to achieve. Ren, my young apprentice, came by several times a week, his natural talent blossoming under my guidance. His enthusiasm was infectious, his questions sharp and eager, pulling me back to the early days of my own creative awakening. Sometimes Imagin would linger after dropping him off, her curiosity stirring as she asked tentative questions about brushstrokes or composition. I could see the spark of her own creativity flickering to life, a flame that had been dormant for years under the weight of practicality and expectation. Thorne, ever the pragmatist, had come to terms with what he still occasionally called my deception. He'd channeled his acceptance into action, helping me reorganize my financial holdings with an eye toward tax efficiency and long-term growth. He might never fully understand why I'd hidden my art for so long, but he respected the results. Both the works that now hung in galleries and the quiet stability I'd built for myself. Fern's transformation was perhaps the most profound. Inspired by my late-in-life revelation, she'd left her marketing job to return to journalism, focusing on women who, like me, had forged unconventional paths through life. Her series, Hidden Legacies, had begun with my story and was now gaining traction, picked up by a national publication. Each profile she wrote seemed to carry a piece of her own heart, a reflection of her growing understanding of what it meant to live authentically. As for me, I had stepped out of the cocoon of secrecy that had bound me for so long. I was no longer just Dora, the reliable office manager, or EK Wisteria, the enigmatic artist. I was simply myself, a complex, multifaceted whole. On a crisp autumn morning, I sat in my studio working on a new piece, the rhythm of my tools a familiar comfort. Mavis lounged in a chair by the window, flipping through the latest catalog from my exhibition in Meridian Heights. The show had been traveling for months, introducing EK Wisteria and, by extension, Odora Kingsley, to audiences across the country. "You're practically a celebrity now," Mavis said, her voice teasing as she tapped a photo of me addressing a crowd of admirers. "How's it feel?" I set down my tools, considering the question. Fame was a strange, ill-fitting garment, not unlike a pair of shoes you hadn't broken in yet. "It's unexpected," I said finally. "Not unpleasant, but not what I sought. I never created for recognition. I created because I had to, because there was something inside me that demanded to be expressed. Now I create for the same reason, but with the knowledge that others are watching. It shifts things subtly." Mavis chuckled, her eyes warm. "Only you would compare fame to a pair of shoes that don't quite fit." "Not ill-fitting," I corrected, smiling. "Just surprising, like they were made for someone else but somehow suit me perfectly." The doorbell chimed, pulling me from the moment. "Imagin's dropping off some paperwork," I explained, setting aside my work and heading downstairs. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Imagin standing there. It was Viva Sterling, looking uncharacteristically out of place, clutching an expensive handbag as if it were a lifeline. "Viva," I said, my surprise evident. "This is unexpected." She shifted her weight, her usual confidence tempered by something softer, almost vulnerable. "May I come in? I won't take much of your time." Curious, I stepped aside, ushering her into my living room, a space no longer dismissed as cluttered, but celebrated as an artist's curated haven. Viva perched on the edge of the sofa, declining my offer of tea with a brisk wave. "I'll get to the point," she said, her voice carrying the sharp efficiency I remembered from our office days. "I'm starting a foundation to support women artists over 50. I'd like you to be on the advisory board." I blinked, caught off guard. Why me?" Her gaze met mine, and for a moment, the competitive edge I'd always known softened into something like admiration. "Because you're the embodiment of what we want to champion. Women who create extraordinary work while the world looks the other way. Women who persist despite being overlooked or underestimated." Her words stirred something deep within me, but I pressed further. "I'm flattered, Viva, but why this? Why now? Art has never been your passion." She looked away, a rare flash of vulnerability crossing her face, her perfectly made-up features softening. "Your story, it got to me. It made me question my own life, what I've built, what I'll leave behind. I've spent decades chasing wealth, status, power. But what have I created? What will remain of me when I am gone? Her honesty disarmed me. Viva Sterling, who had always seemed so certain, so unshakable, was grappling with the same questions that had driven me to reveal myself. This foundation, I said gently, it's your creation, isn't it? Your legacy. She nodded, her eyes bright with something like hope. Perhaps. Will you help me build it? I studied her, seeing past the designer clothes, the polished exterior, to the woman beneath, someone searching, like I had, for meaning beyond the world's measures of success. I'd be honored, I said finally, on one condition. We focused not just on established artists, but on women who haven't yet found their voice. Women still trapped in lives others expect them to lead. A smile spread across her face, genuine and unguarded. I was hoping you'd say that. She reached into her bag, pulling out a folder. I've started compiling ideas. Could we discuss them over lunch next week? After she left, I returned to the studio where Mavis waited, her eyebrows raised. Was that Viva Sterling I saw leaving? The same Viva who once said your sensible shoes were an affront to femininity? I laughed, recounting our conversation as Mavis listened, her amazement growing. Well, she said when I'd finished, it seems your revelation has set off a chain reaction. First your kids, now Viva. Who's next, the whole town? I smiled, picking up my tools. I like to think of it as a pebble in a pond. The ripples keep spreading, touching shores I never dreamed of reaching. And spread they did. 6 months later, the Sterling Kingsley Foundation for Women in the Arts launched with significant funding and immediate acclaim. Applications poured in from women across the country, teachers who painted in the quiet hours after their children slept, nurses who sculpted between grueling shifts, office workers who wrote poetry on their lunch breaks. Women like I had been, carving out space for creativity in lives shaped by others' expectations. We offered grants, mentorship, exhibition opportunities, everything I'd lacked in my early years. Each time we helped a woman step into her artistic identity, I felt a profound sense of purpose, as if my own journey had been leading to this moment all along. My personal life deepened in parallel. My children, once strangers to the woman I'd hidden, now knew me, truly knew me, for the first time. Imagin still wrestled with what she saw as years of deception, her hurt surfacing in quiet moments of doubt. But even she couldn't deny the authenticity I now lived with, the openness that had replaced my guarded secrecy. Together, we were writing a new story, one of connection and understanding, built on the foundation of my truth. In the soft glow of evening, during one of our now frequent family dinners, Imagin's eyes sparkled with a mix of hesitation and excitement as she shared a quiet dream. I've been thinking about signing up for a pottery class, she admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability, as if testing the waters of her own courage. There's something about shaping clay with my hands, creating something real and tangible, that's always called to me. Her words hung in the air, delicate yet weighty, revealing a yearning to explore a part of herself she'd kept tucked away. I couldn't help but smile, my heart warming at her tentative step towards self-expression. You'd be brilliant at it, I encouraged, my tone firm with belief. You've got a natural eye for form and balance. It's in your blood. Her face lit up, a flicker of surprise giving way to a pleased, almost bashful smile. Do you really think so? She asked, her voice soft but hopeful. I know so, I replied, chuckling. Creativity runs deep in this family, whether we've always shown it or not. In that moment, I saw her wrestle with doubt and possibility, her heart stirring with the promise of creation. Thorne, ever the pragmatist, approached my artistic journey with a grounded sense of purpose that both surprised and touched me. He'd taken it upon himself to help me establish a trust to preserve my collection, his meticulous nature ensuring every detail was considered. These pieces belong together, he insisted one afternoon, his voice steady but laced with a rare intensity. They're not just art. They're a story, your story, woven through years of quiet creation. If they were scattered, that narrative would unravel. His words struck a chord deep within me, stirring a gratitude I hadn't expected. He saw beyond the market value of my work. understanding the emotional weight of each piece, a tapestry of my life, crafted in secret over decades. I felt a lump in my throat, moved by his quiet reverence for what my art meant to me. It wasn't just about legacy, it was about honoring the truth I'd hidden for so long, the fragments of myself I'd poured into every brush stroke and composition. Fern's project, Hidden Legacies, had grown far beyond my own story, blossoming into a celebration of countless women who'd lived extraordinary lives in the shadows of obscurity. Her passion for uncovering these untold narratives had recently earned her a book deal, a milestone that filled her with both pride and pressure. During a visit to my studio, she sat surrounded by my latest works, her eyes bright with purpose. "Mom, you started this," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your courage to step out of the shadows inspired all these women to share their stories." Her words caught me off guard, and I shook my head, deflecting. "It wasn't courage, Fern. It was necessity. I couldn't live divided anymore. The weight of it was too much." She leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "That's what courage is," she countered, her tone gentle but firm. "Doing what you have to, even when it scares you to your core." Her conviction made me pause, forcing me to reconsider my own narrative. Perhaps she was right. Revealing myself as EK Wisteria, shedding the pseudonym I'd hidden behind for decades, had been terrifying, a leap into the unknown, risking judgment and misunderstanding. Yet, in that vulnerability, I'd found wholeness. And now, as I continued to teach, mentor, and create without the certainty of recognition, I realized that courage wasn't a single act, but a series of choices to live authentically, day after day. One quiet Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang, shattering the calm of my studio. It was Jasper Thornfield, his voice brimming with barely contained excitement. "Dora, darling, are you sitting down?" he asked, the words tumbling out in a rush. "The Museum of Modern Art wants to acquire Integration for their permanent collection." My breath caught, and I nearly dropped the phone, my heart pounding with disbelief. "But it's not for sale," I stammered, clinging to the principle I'd held for years. "I've always been clear about that." Jasper's laugh was warm, undeterred. I know, but this is MoMA, Dora. They're offering to commission a reproduction for you to keep while displaying the original in their upcoming exhibition on lived experiences in visual form. It's an extraordinary honor." I sank into a chair, the weight of his words settling over me like a wave. Integration, my most personal work, a visual chronicle of my journey from a divided self to wholeness, would be preserved, shared with the world, and cherished by generations. My mind raced, torn between pride and the lingering fear of letting go. "Dora, are you still there?" Jasper's voice pulled me back. "Yes," I said at last, my voice steadying. "Tell them yes, but on one condition. The piece must be credited to Odora Kingsley, not EK Wisteria. It's time to let the pseudonym go for good." He chuckled, a knowing warmth in his tone. "I had a feeling you'd say that. I'll handle everything." That evening, I wandered along Wisteria Court as the sun dipped low, casting the neighborhood in hues of amber and gold. The familiar street, with its rows of ordinary houses, felt both unchanged and profoundly different. A year had passed since I'd revealed my secret identity, and the world had shifted beneath my feet. Yet these homes, filled with everyday people, remained a quiet reminder of the complexity hidden within each life. How many others, I wondered, were living divided existences, harboring passions and talents unseen by those around them? The thought stirred a quiet ache in my chest, sorrow for the constraints that forced such secrecy, but also a flicker of hope for the possibility of wholeness. I imagined a world where authenticity didn't come at a cost, where people could live fully as themselves without fear. When I returned home, a small package waited on my porch, a note from Wren tucked beside it. "For your new studio, love, your apprentice." And inside was a handcrafted nameplate, the words Odora Kingsley, artist, carved with precision into vibrant, painted wood. My fingers traced the letters, and tears welled in my eyes. Wren, my grandson, had poured his heart into this, using the skills I'd taught him. The gift was more than an object. It was a bridge between generations, a tangible symbol of the connection we'd forged through art. In that moment, I felt the weight of my revelation settle into something precious. It had not only freed me, but had inspired those I loved to embrace their own creativity. The following week brought another surprise, an invitation to speak at Briarwood Community College's commencement ceremony. The dean's letter was heartfelt, explaining that they wished to honor me as both a longtime community member and a newly celebrated artist. Your story embodies the principles we hope to instill in our graduates. It read, persistence, creativity, and the courage to define success on your own terms. Though public speaking filled me with dread, I accepted, driven by a sense of responsibility to share what I'd learned. As I prepared my speech, I found myself grappling with the idea of legacy. What did I want to leave behind for these young graduates, many of whom were just beginning to carve out their own paths? The question lingered, shaping my words as I wrestled with how to distill a lifetime of lessons into a single moment. The day of the ceremony dawned bright and clear, the air buzzing with anticipation. From the stage, I spotted my family in the audience. Imagin, Thorne and his wife, Fern and Wren, all watching with a mix of pride and nervous expectation. Mavis, my old friend, sat beside them, flashing me a thumbs up as I approached the podium. I took a deep breath, my voice steadier than I'd hoped. Good afternoon, I began. My name is Odora Kingsley. For most of my life, I was known in this community as an office manager at Briarwood Insurance, a wife, a mother, and more recently, a grandmother. What almost no one knew was that I was also EK Wisteria, an artist whose work hung in galleries and collections across the country. I paused, scanning the sea of young faces before me, their eyes wide with curiosity. I stand before you as someone who lived a divided life for decades, creating beauty in secret while fulfilling conventional roles in public. I don't share this as a model to emulate, but as a cautionary tale about the cost of hiding who you are and the power of embracing your whole self. As I spoke, I saw flickers of recognition in the audience, not of my specific story, which had been covered in local news, but of the universal struggle to balance authenticity with expectation. The world will often ask you to be less than you are, I continued, my voice gaining strength. Less complex, less challenging, less fully human. It will urge you to fit into neat categories that make others comfortable. The greatest challenge you'll face may not be achieving success, but maintaining your inner wholeness against these pressures. I shared my journey toward integration, the fear and freedom of revealing my true self. I acknowledged the privileges that had allowed me to create in secret, time, stability, and the support of a few trusted confidants. And I urged the graduates to build communities where authenticity was celebrated, where no one would need to hide their gifts to belong. My fortune was never primarily financial, I concluded, my heart full as I spoke. My true wealth lies in the ability to create, to translate my vision into something tangible, to leave behind pieces of myself that carry my perspective and experience. Every one of you has this capacity for creation, whether it's through art, ideas, or the way you live your life. My hope for you is that you find your creative voice and the courage to share it openly, without fear or division. The applause that followed was overwhelming, a wave of sound that carried me back to my seat. I caught Fern wiping tears from her eyes, Thorne nodding with quiet emotion, and Imagin sitting tall, her pride unmistakable. At a small celebration dinner that evening at Periwinkle Patisserie, my family surprised me with a gift, a pendant designed by Wren, with help from a jeweler friend of Fern's. A miniature paper cutting, delicate and intricate, glowed under glass. So you can always carry your art with you, Wren said, fastening it around my neck. My fingers brushed the pendant, and I felt a rush of gratitude so deep it nearly stole my breath. It's perfect, I whispered, my voice thick. As we ate and laughed, I noticed subtle shifts in our family's dynamic. Imagin's newfound respect, Thorne's genuine curiosity about my next project, Fern's easy camaraderie as a fellow creator. We were weaving something new, a bond rooted in truth rather than half-understood roles. The next morning I rose early and made my way to my studio, drawn by the quiet pull of creation that had sustained me for decades. The piece on my workbench, a complex exploration of intergenerational connection, waited patiently, its lines and colors alive with possibility. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating my tools and materials, and I felt a profound sense of peace. This was my place, no longer hidden, but woven into the fabric of my life. The studio door stood open, Ren's nameplate proudly displayed, a testament to the legacy we were building together. As I picked up my brush, I knew that whatever came next, I was whole, fully Odora Kingsley, artist and free. The work I'd crafted was now boldly showcased, no longer tucked away in the shadows of secrecy. I'd shed the masks, the divided selves, and stood fully as myself, a woman embracing every facet of her being, pouring her soul into the art she was destined to create. A soft knock at the door broke my focus, and I glanced up to see Imagin lingering in the doorway, her usual confidence replaced by a rare, tentative pause. "May I sit and watch you work for a bit?" she asked, her voice carrying a quiet curiosity. "I've never really seen how you do it." A warmth spread through me, and I gestured to the chair beside my work table with a welcoming smile. Of course, I'd love that. As she settled in, I picked up my tools, the familiar weight of precision scissors grounding me. I began the intricate dance of cutting, peeling back layer after layer of paper to unveil the image hidden within. The studio was quiet, save for the delicate snip of my scissors and the faint rustle of paper shifting under my hands. Imagin watched, her eyes tracing every movement, and I could sense her absorbing the moment, the intimacy of creation. After a long stretch of comfortable silence, she spoke, her voice soft with wonder. "It's like you're conjuring something out of thin air. Magic, almost. Making something where there was nothing." I paused, meeting her gaze with a gentle correction. "Not from nothing, from everything. Every piece I create is woven from my experiences, my observations, the spark of imagination, and the skills I've honed over years. Nothing we make comes from a void. It's all built on what's come before." Her brow furrowed as she considered this, her eyes following the steady rhythm of my hands as they carved with practiced ease. A flicker of understanding crossed her face. "I think I'm starting to see why this means so much to you," she said slowly. "It's not just about crafting something beautiful. It's about giving voice to something deeper, something words alone can't capture." Her insight warmed me, and I nodded, a quiet pride swelling in my chest. "Exactly. Each piece is a dialogue, with myself, with the world. It's my way of making the invisible seen, of sharing what's buried inside." Imagin's expression softened, her eyes searching mine. "Like you," she murmured, "making yourself seen, after all this time." I set my tools down, the weight of her words settling over me. Turning to face my eldest daughter, I saw something new in her, a vulnerability, an openness, as if she was truly seeing me for the first time. "Yes," I said, my voice steady but thick with emotion. "Exactly like that." In the months that followed, my life unfolded in ways I could never have imagined when I first chose to unveil my hidden fortune. The Sterling Kingsley Foundation blossomed, becoming a beacon for women artists across the nation. Its grants and exhibitions gave voice to creators who, like me, had once kept their passions tucked away. My own work began to resonate beyond the art world, sparking conversations about creativity, identity, and the often overlooked contributions of older women. I found myself teaching workshops at Briarwood Community College, guiding students of all ages through the techniques I'd spent decades refining. Many were women my age or older, their eyes alight with the courage to finally pursue dreams they'd set aside for family or career. One student, her hands trembling as she worked with delicate paper, confided in me during a class. "I never thought I could start something new at 65, she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But watching you, seeing how you've stepped into who you are, it's shown me it's never too late to become myself." Her words struck deep, echoing my own journey. Becoming oneself wasn't about uncovering some static, unchanging truth. It was about weaving together every piece of who we are, our joys, our struggles, our contradictions, into a whole authentic self, no matter our age or circumstances. My relationships with my children evolved in unexpected ways, each of them finding their own path toward creativity. Thorne, my pragmatic son, who'd built a career in investment banking, surprised me by enrolling in a woodworking class. "I've spent my life shuffling numbers," he told me one evening, his voice tinged with a hunger for something more. "I want to feel what it's like to make something real, something I can touch." I saw in him a spark I hadn't noticed before, a quiet yearning to connect with the tangible, to create rather than calculate. Imagin, meanwhile, took up pottery, her natural perfectionism both a challenge and a gift as she shaped clay. During one of our now regular studio visits, she laughed ruefully, wiping clay from her hands. "This is teaching me to let go of perfection," she admitted. "I've always struggled with that, but there's something freeing about embracing the flaws." Her words carried a deeper truth, a reflection of how our time together was reshaping her, softening the edges of her tightly controlled world. Fern, my daughter, published her book, Hidden Legacies: Women Who Created in Secret, with my story as its opening chapter. At the launch event, she stood before the crowd and revealed a secret of her own. She'd been writing poetry for years, hiding it out of fear of judgment. "Watching you step into the light gave me the courage to share my work," she said, her voice steady, but her eyes glistening as they met mine. I felt a swell of pride, not just for her accomplishment, but for the bond we'd forged through our shared vulnerability. And then there was Ren, my grandson, whose artistic talent bloomed under my guidance. We worked side by side, his young hands learning to wield tools with care. One afternoon, as we shaped paper together, he looked up at me, his eyes bright with ambition. "Do you think I could be famous like you someday, Grandma?" he asked. I smiled, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You could be, Ren, but fame isn't the point. The real joy is in creating something that's yours alone, something no one else could make. That's what matters." He nodded, his young face serious as he absorbed a truth that stood against the world's obsession with external validation. I wanted him to understand the quiet, profound satisfaction of creation for its own sake. One spring evening, as Wisteria Court bloomed in soft pinks and whites, I sat on my porch swing, watching the neighborhood children play. Inside, the sounds of my family preparing dinner filled the air. Imagin and Fern's playful bickering over spices. Thorne's deep laugh at something Wren had said. It was a symphony of domestic warmth, one I'd once feared would fracture under the weight of my revealed truths. Instead, those truths had strengthened us, forging bonds rooted in authenticity rather than assumption. The fortune I'd kept hidden, both the wealth and the art, hadn't driven us apart, as I'd once dreaded. It had drawn us closer, creating connections built on mutual understanding. Mavis joined me on the porch, settling into the swing with a contented sigh. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, her voice warm with the familiarity of decades of friendship. I watched the sunset paint the sky in hues I'd once tried to capture in paper and light. "I was thinking about fortune," I said slowly. "What it really means." Mavis tilted her head, her eyes knowing. "And what's your conclusion?" I paused, letting the words form carefully. "The greatest fortune isn't in what you gather or achieve. It's in what you discover about yourself, what you dare to express. It's the courage to become fully who you are, no matter what that looks like." Mavis nodded, her silence a testament to her understanding. We sat together as twilight deepened, two friends who'd walked alongside each other's transformations with love and acceptance. Wren's voice called from inside, brimming with excitement about something he wanted to show me. I rose from the swing, casting one last glance at the street where I'd lived for so long, divided between my hidden selves. Now I would spend my remaining years whole, fully claiming the life I'd built. The fortune I'd revealed wasn't just the art or the money, it was the freedom of integration, of stepping into my authentic self. After years of compartmentalization, this was the legacy I'd leave. Not only in galleries or collections, but in the lives I'd touched, the example I'd set for my children, my grandson, and the women I'd inspired to embrace their creative voices. As I stepped back into the warmth of my true home, where every part of me was welcome, a deep peace settled over me. Whatever lay ahead, I would face it as Odora Kingsley. Mother, grandmother, artist, mentor, friend. No more hiding, no more division, just me in all my intricate, creative, fully realized humanity. That I knew was the greatest fortune of all. 5 years passed in a whirlwind of growth and transformation. My 70s, which I'd once imagined as a quiet retreat, became the most vibrant chapter of my life. The Sterling Kingsley Foundation expanded far beyond our original dreams, with satellite offices in 3 cities, supporting hundreds of women artists through grants, exhibitions, and mentorship. Viva, my unexpected partner in this venture, brought her sharp business mind to complement my artistic vision. What began as her quest for a legacy had evolved into a genuine passion. She now spoke of emerging artists with the same fervor she'd once reserved for investment deals. Her silver hair now cut in a chic bob, her designer clothes often dusted with paint from her own creative experiments. One crisp October morning, Viva swept into my studio, her energy as commanding as ever. "We need to talk about the Harrisville residency program," she announced, waving off my amused greeting. "The Oakwood Foundation doubled their funding offer, but they want us to expand to 12 artists instead of 8. I say we counter with 10 and use the extra funds to—" Her voice trailed off as she laid out her plans, and I couldn't help but smile at the fire in her eyes. This was Viva transformed, still sharp, still strategic, but now deeply invested in the same mission that had driven me for decades. Together, we were building something extraordinary, a legacy that would outlive us both. The room was awash in the soft glow of late morning light, filtering through the studio's tall windows. I watched Vivica pace, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor, her hands gesturing with a fervor that betrayed her unease. Her talk of funding for the Harrisville residency was relentless, a cascade of numbers and deadlines spilling from her lips. But her intensity wasn't about budgets or timelines. It never was when her eyes flickered like that. I couldn't help but smile at her restless energy, the way she seemed to carry the weight of the world in her tailored blazer. "Vivica, slow down," I said, my voice steady, warm. "Sit, have some tea. The world won't end if we take a moment to breathe." She let out a theatrical sigh, her shoulders slumping as she dropped into the chair across from my cluttered work table. Accepting the steaming cup I slid toward her, she muttered, "You've become insufferably calm in your old age, Dora." I chuckled, stirring my own tea, the spoon clinking softly against the porcelain. Not calm, just seasoned enough to know that most crises can wait for a sip or two. I studied her over the rim of my cup, her face a mask of practiced composure that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What's really going on? This isn't about Harrisville." For a moment, her carefully constructed facade wavered. A crack in the polished exterior she wore like armor. Her gaze dropped to the tea, her fingers tightening around the handle. "My daughter called," she said, her voice quieter now, laced with a rawness that made my chest ache. "She's getting divorced." The words hung heavy in the air, and I felt the weight of Vivica's unspoken pain settle between us. I knew her relationship with Celestine was a fragile thread, stretched thin by years of distance and misunderstanding. Celestine Sterling Hayes, a corporate attorney in Azrite City, had always kept her mother at arm's length, their interactions polite but cold, like strangers bound by blood but little else. "Is she okay?" I asked, my tone gentle, probing without pushing. Vivica's lips pressed into a thin line, and she gave a small, bitter laugh. "I don't know." She didn't even tell me herself. Her assistant called to update my contact information. The hurt in her voice was palpable, a wound she'd carried for years, reopened with every missed call, every formal exchange. "She's 38, Dora, and she still can't have a real conversation with me." Beneath her brisk tone, I heard the ache of a mother who had spent decades building walls around her heart, only to find them mirrored in her daughter's indifference. Over the years, Vivica had let me glimpse the fragments of her life, a driven career woman who had climbed the ladder of success with relentless ambition, often at the cost of her personal connections. She had entrusted Celestine to nannies and prestigious boarding schools, believing structure and opportunity would compensate for her absence. But now, sitting across from me, her hands trembling slightly as she set down her cup, I saw the regret that gnawed at her, the realization that her achievements hadn't bridged the chasm between her and her only child. "Have you tried reaching out?" I asked, my voice soft but firm, She nodded, her movements sharp, almost offensive. Of course I have. She's too busy right now. The teacup clinked sharply against the saucer as she set it down, a small rebellion against her own vulnerability. Let's focus on Harrisville. At least that's something I can control. But I wasn't ready to let her retreat behind her work. I reached across the table, my hand covering hers, warm and steady. Go to Azurite City, Vivica. Don't call ahead. Just show up at her office with no expectations, no agenda. Just be there for her. Her eyes met mine, flat and guarded. She doesn't need me, Dora. She never has. The words were a shield, but they couldn't hide the flicker of longing beneath them. I squeezed her hand, my voice firm. Everyone needs connection, especially in moments like this. Trust me, I've learned a thing or two about mending what's broken. She looked skeptical, her lips parting as if to argue, but then she nodded, a slow, reluctant gesture. Maybe you're right. The foundation can manage without me for a few days. More than manage, I said with a smile. We've got Odora, that brilliant program director you fought to hire despite everyone's doubts. For the first time, a genuine smile softened Vivica's face, a spark of pride cutting through her gloom. Zara's exceptional, isn't she? Reminds me of another unconventional soul I know. She stood, smoothing her smock with a brisk motion, as if to shake off the weight of our conversation. Fine, Dora, I'll go to Azurite City, but when I'm back, we're locking down those Harrisville details. After she left, I returned to my work table, my hands finding the familiar rhythm of cutting and folding paper. The piece I was crafting was a gift for my grandson Ren's 16th birthday, a delicate paper landscape of sage blossom shores, where we'd spent countless summers together in the cottage I now called my own. Ren had blossomed into a gifted artist, his digital creations vibrant and bold, yet grounded in the traditional techniques I'd taught him. As I worked, my thoughts drifted to my family, to the ways our bonds had shifted and deepened since I'd embraced my truth as an artist. My daughter Imagin had left her high-powered executive career to pursue ceramics, her sculptural pieces now drawing attention in galleries across the country. Our relationship, once strained by her ambition and my quiet sacrifices, had evolved into a friendship I hadn't dared hope for. A shared journey as artists, each navigating our own path. Thorne, my son, remained anchored in the financial world, but his woodworking hobby had become a bridge between us. He'd discovered the meditative pull of creation, the way time slipped away when his hands shaped wood into something beautiful. Last Christmas, he'd gifted us each a handcrafted box, their intricate inlays a testament to his precision and care. Fern, my other daughter, had carved her own path with her book, Hidden Legacies, which had sparked 2 sequels and a documentary series. Her work, unearthing the overlooked contributions of women, had earned her a residency at Briarwood Community College, where she taught narrative journalism and creative nonfiction. Her poetry, once shared only with me in quiet moments, now graced the pages of prestigious journals, each word a testament to her courage. The doorbell's chime pulled me from my reverie, and I glanced at the clock, startled to see it was past noon. Setting aside my tools, I descended the stairs to find a delivery person holding an oversized envelope. Miss Kingsley, this needs a signature, they said. I signed, my curiosity piqued by the return address, the National Endowment for the Arts in Washington, D.C. In the kitchen, I carefully opened the envelope, my heart quickening as I pulled out an official letter and a certificate, its elegant design catching the light. Dear Ms. Kingsley, the letter began, it is our great pleasure to inform you that you have been selected to receive the National Medal of Arts, the highest award given to artists and arts patrons by the United States government. My hands trembled as I set the letter down, the weight of the words sinking in. The National Medal of Arts, an honor I'd never imagined, never sought. The ceremony, set for 3 months hence at the White House, invited family to join. Overwhelmed, I retreated to my studio, seeking solace in the familiar rhythm of my work. But for once, the act of creation couldn't quiet my mind. The magnitude of this recognition kept intruding, along with a question. What would my younger self make of this? That younger Dora, the office manager who stole moments for her art, the mother who hid her passion to preserve family harmony, the woman who lived divided, would she have believed this possible? I called Mavis, my oldest friend, whose blunt warmth grounded me. About damn time, she said, her voice gruff with pride. The world's finally catching up to what I've known forever. I'm proud of you, Dora, not just for the medal, but for every step that got you here. Every risk, every moment you claimed your truth. After we hung up, I sat at my work table tracing the certificate's embossed seal. I'd need to call my children, plan for the ceremony, draft remarks. But first I needed to sit with what this meant. Not just the accolade, but the journey. From a hidden artist to a national honoree, the path had been winding, marked by resistance. Critics had questioned my dual life. Family had grappled with my emergence. Even some artists had resented my sudden rise. But the rewards, the freedom of living whole, the deepening of honest relationships, the chance to guide others outweighed any medal. I picked up my phone and dialed Imagin first. Mom, she answered, the hum of her pottery wheel in the background. I was just about to call. I got into that Japan residency. Her voice brimmed with quiet joy, a far cry from her old corporate intensity. That's incredible, Thorne, I said, my heart swelling. Master Tanaka's a rare opportunity. She laughed softly. What's your news? You're calling during studio time. Something's up. I smiled at her intuition. I've been awarded the National Medal of Arts. The ceremony's in January at the White House. There was a pause, then a soft thud, as if she'd sat down. Mom, that's extraordinary. I'm so proud. We all will be. Her words carried a warmth untainted by the competitiveness that once defined her. The invitation includes family, I added. I'd love for you all to be there. My daughter's voice, warm and resolute, crackled through the phone. Nothing could keep us away, Mom. Ren's going to lose his mind when he hears this. His grandmother, honored at the White House with a national medal, he'll be impossible to live with. Her words painted a vivid picture of my grandson's boundless energy, his eyes sparkling with pride, and I couldn't help but chuckle, my heart swelling at the thought of his unrestrained joy. I should probably call the others, I said, already imagining their reactions. But Imagin cut in, her tone eager. Let me do it. I want to be the one to break the news. Then her voice softened, carrying a weight of admiration that caught me off guard. Mom, this honor, it's so deserved. Your work, your life, it's not just about our family. It's part of a bigger story, one that speaks to women's creativity, their resilience, their refusal to be silenced. You've shown what's possible. Her words struck deep, stirring emotions I hadn't expected. Tears pricked my eyes, not from sadness, but from the profound connection her recognition forged. Thank you, Imagin, I murmured, my voice thick. Hearing that from you means more than any medal ever could. After we hung up, I returned to the piece I'd been crafting for Ren's birthday, my hands moving with purpose across the canvas until the soft glow of daylight faded into dusk. My eyes grew heavy, but my heart felt light, buoyed by the day's revelations. As I tidied my studio, my gaze lingered on the small wooden nameplate fixed to the door. Odora Kingsley, artist. A gift from Ren, carved years ago when he was just a boy. Its presence was a quiet testament to the journey we'd all taken since the day I'd unveiled my hidden truth. It wasn't just a nameplate, it was a marker of transformation, a reminder of the courage it took to step into the light. The weeks before the White House ceremony were a whirlwind, each day brimming with activity that seemed to pull me in every direction. My story, the duality of my life, the late-blooming recognition of my art, had captured the media's imagination. Reporters clamored for interviews, their questions probing the layers of my past, while profiles in magazines and newspapers cast my work in a new, radiant light. The Sterling Kingsley Foundation, born from my desire to uplift others, seized the moment, using the spotlight to amplify our mission. Applications for our program surged, doubling in number, each one a testament to the hunger for creative opportunity. Amid the chaos, I felt a quiet pride, not just in my own achievements, but in the ripple effect they were creating. Viva returned from Azurite City, her face etched with a cautious hope that hadn't been there before. Over coffee in my kitchen, she shared her news with a drawn, almost self-deprecating smile. Celestine didn't slam the door in my face this time. She even agreed to dinner. Twice, if you can believe it. And she's coming to visit next month, says she's curious about this foundation of ours. Her words carried a flicker of vulnerability, a rare glimpse into the heart she so often guarded. "That's wonderful, Viva," I said, genuinely warmed by her progress. "Did you talk about the divorce?" She hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "Eventually, it wasn't easy. She's fragile right now, not financially, she's got that covered, but emotionally. Her husband left her for his research assistant. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Decades ago, Viva's ex-husband had done the same, trading her for a younger colleague. She gave a small, knowing nod. History has a way of circling back. But this time, I didn't tell her to tough it out like I did after my own divorce. I just listened. And somehow that felt like enough. Her words lingered, heavy with the weight of lessons learned, and I felt a surge of admiration for her willingness to soften, to be present in a way she hadn't before. The night before we left for Washington, my family gathered at my home for a celebration dinner, the air thick with laughter and the clink of glasses. Imagin and Fern had poured their hearts into the meal, crafting dishes that told stories of their own. Imagin's bold, inventive flavors softened by Fern's intuitive touch. Thorne, ever the connoisseur, had chosen wines from his meticulously curated cellar, each bottle a quiet nod to the moments we'd shared over the years. Wren, with his boundless creativity, had designed digital place cards for each of us, their animated designs flickering with personalized touches that made us laugh and marvel. As we sat around the dining table, expanded to embrace our growing family, I took a moment to study their faces. Imagin, once rigid in her corporate armor, now radiated warmth, her years with clay smoothing her edges. Thorne, once so reserved, now carried himself with an ease I'd never seen, his laughter freer, his gestures more open. Fernie, secure in her professional triumphs, still held that quiet sensitivity that made her so uniquely her. And Wren, teetering on the edge of adulthood, his eyes still alight with the same wonder that had first drawn him to my art. Raising my glass, I spoke, my voice steady but full of emotion. I want to toast not to medals or accolades, but to transformation, to the courage it takes to live truthfully, to see one another clearly, and to embrace change when new truths come to light. They echoed my words, their glasses gleaming in the candlelight, and the moment felt like a promise, a shared vow to keep growing, together. As the evening wound down and dishes were cleared, Wren approached me, an envelope in his hand. "I wanted to give you this before tomorrow," he said, his voice tinged with nervous excitement. "It's not your birthday yet, but it felt right." Inside was a handmade card and tucked within it, a USB drive. "What's this?" I asked, curiosity piqued. His face lit up, words tumbling out in a rush. "It's a digital archive. I've spent the last year gathering everything I could find about your work as EK Wisteria. Exhibition catalogs, reviews, photos, interviews. I recorded oral histories from people in the art world who knew you, and reflections from all of us in the family. It's your artistic journey, documented." I stared at the small device, my throat tight with awe. The thoughtfulness of it, the care he'd poured into preserving my legacy overwhelmed me. "Wren, this is extraordinary," I whispered. His expression grew serious, his voice carrying a wisdom far beyond his 16 years. "The medal honors what you've achieved, but it captures how you got there, the process, the evolution. I wanted to celebrate the journey, not just the destination." Tears spilled over, not from sorrow, but from the profound understanding he'd shown. In that moment, I knew that whatever legacy I left behind, artistic, financial, or personal, would be safe in his hands, carried forward with the same integrity and insight he'd poured into this gift. The White House ceremony unfolded in a blur of formality and light, its grandeur both humbling and exhilarating. I wore a dress crafted by a textile artist supported by our foundation, its intricate patterns a tribute to the creativity we championed. Around my neck hung the pendant Wren had given me years ago, a quiet anchor amidst the pomp. My family sat in the audience, their faces aglow with pride as the president draped the medal around my neck, reading a citation that praised my unique vision and unwavering commitment to authenticity. When it was my turn to speak, I set aside my prepared remarks, choosing instead to speak from the heart. This honor celebrates a body of work created over 4 decades, much of it while living what seemed to be an ordinary life, I began, my voice steady but full of feeling. Like so many women of my generation, I found creative space in the margins, between family duties, professional demands, and the expectations of the world. I built something meaningful in stolen moments, in the quiet of early mornings, in the stillness of late nights. My gaze found my family, their presence grounding me. What started as necessity, keeping my artistic self hidden, became a cage I could no longer bear. At 68, I chose to bring my truth into the light, to weave together the parts of myself I'd kept apart. This medal honors not just my art, but that choice to claim wholeness after years of division. I paused, the weight of the moment settling over me. My hope is that this recognition lights a path for others, especially women who've silenced their creative voices for the sake of duty or convention. It's never too late to become your fullest self. The applause that followed felt like a wave of affirmation, not just for my work, but for the journey that had brought me here, a journey that had deepened my bonds with those I love most. At the reception afterward, surrounded by my family in a room aglow with elegance, I felt a rare, perfect contentment. My life had unfolded in ways I could never have foreseen on the day I'd revealed my secret fortune, a decision sparked by my children's dismissal of my accomplishments. What began as a need to prove myself had blossomed into a profound reclamation of my whole self, its impact reaching far beyond my own life, touching countless others through the foundation and beyond. A year later, as I marked my 75th birthday, I made a decision that surprised even myself. After months of consultation with my attorney and financial advisors, I announced the creation of the Kingsley Center for Women's Artistic Innovation. It would be a sanctuary in Briarwood Glen, a physical space housing not only the Sterling Kingsley Foundation's headquarters, but also studios, galleries, and residency apartments for women artists. The center would rise on land I'd quietly acquired over the years, a serene, wooded property beside Laurel Harbor, where natural light and tranquility would nurture creativity. The architectural plans, crafted with a female-led firm known for sustainable design, wove elements of my artistic aesthetic into every detail, from the sweeping lines of the buildings to the textures of its interiors. Over lunch at Periwinkle Patisserie, Mavis, my oldest friend, studied the plans with wide eyes. "You never stop, do you?" she said, her voice a mix of awe and amusement. "Just when I think you've settled into a rhythm, you dream up something this bold." I smiled, spreading jam on a scone, the sweetness grounding me. Maybe I'm making up for all those years I held back. She shook her head, her gaze piercing. "It's more than that. You're building a legacy, not just for yourself, but for every woman who's ever felt her voice didn't matter." Her words settled over me, heavy with truth, and I knew she was right. This center wasn't just a building, it was a promise, a beacon for those who, like me, had found their way to wholeness through the act of creation. On a radiant spring morning, the air was alive with the promise of new beginnings, as sunlight wove through tender leaves and wildflowers painted the landscape in vibrant bursts. Odora Kingsley stood at the heart of the groundbreaking ceremony for the Kingsley Center for Women's Artistic Innovation, her heart swelling with a quiet triumph. Her family flanked her, their presence a grounding force as she gripped the shovel, its blade biting into the earth to mark the physical birth of her dream. This moment was more than a ceremony. It was the culmination of a lifetime spent navigating divisions between her public persona and private passion, between her roles as mother and artist. The center was her vision made manifest, a sanctuary where women's creativity could flourish, unshackled from the constraints she had once faced, a legacy that would outlive her and uplift countless others. As the crowd erupted in applause and cameras captured the moment, Odora felt a profound sense of alignment, as if every step of her journey had led her here. Her children, Viva and Celestine, stood nearby, their once fractured bond slowly healing through their shared commitment to the foundation. Their presence symbolized not just familial reconciliation, but the organizational partnership that would carry the center forward. Artists from across the country, whom Odora had mentored and supported over the years, had traveled to witness this milestone, their faces radiant with shared pride. The fortune she had guarded so fiercely, both her financial wealth and her artistic talent, had transformed into something far greater, a beacon of creative empowerment that would endure beyond her lifetime. In that moment, she felt the weight of her past secrecy lift, replaced by a buoyant certainty that she had built something true and lasting. That evening, as twilight draped Wisteria Court in soft hues, Odora settled onto her porch with a steaming cup of tea, her gaze tracing the fireflies' delicate dance across her garden. The neighborhood had evolved over the decades, its rhythm shifting as new families replaced those who had moved on or passed away. Children now played in the streets, their laughter echoing through a place that held her memories like a well-worn book. These were the descendants of a community she had joined as a young woman, a secret artist masquerading as an office manager. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her reverie. A text from Imagin lit up the screen. "Just heard from the Brookfield Gallery. They want a solo exhibition of my new series. You were right about the glazing technique. Thank you for always pushing me to take risks." Odora's lips curved into a smile as she typed a heartfelt "congratulations" and arranged to visit Imagin's studio the following week to see the finished works. Moments later, another message arrived from Fern, sharing the striking cover design for her new book, followed by one from Thorne, proudly displaying a photo of an intricate chest he was crafting for his first grandchild, due in 3 months. These messages, brimming with creative fervor and familial warmth, were a testament to the transformation in their relationships. The distance that had once separated them, fueled by Odora's guarded nature and their misconceptions, had dissolved, giving way to a bond rooted in mutual respect and understanding. As night deepened, Odora was drawn to her studio, the pull of creation as irresistible as ever. The piece she was working on, a sprawling installation commissioned for the center's main entrance, was her most ambitious yet. It wove together paper, light, shadow, and subtle motion, triggered by the air currents of passing visitors. A living artwork that seemed to breathe with the space it inhabited. She worked late into the night, her hands moving with the familiar cadence of cutting and shaping, testing and refining. When she finally set down her tools, her reflection in the studio window greeted her, silver hair loosely tied back, lines of focus etched around her eyes, hands marked by age but still deft, still sure. At 70, she was not the woman she had imagined becoming in her youth. She was something richer, more whole, a woman who had claimed every facet of herself and in doing so, had empowered others to do the same. The fortune she had once hidden from her skeptical children had revealed its true worth, far beyond money or art. It was the courage to live authentically, to create unapologetically, and to turn limitations into boundless possibility. As she prepared for bed, her thoughts drifted to the plaque that would one day grace the center's entrance. From hidden to whole, a place for women's creative emergence. It encapsulated not only the center's mission, but her own life's arc, a journey from necessary compartmentalization to joyful integration. Whatever lay ahead, she would meet it as her complete self. Odora Kingsley, mother, grandmother, artist, philanthropist, mentor, friend. No more veils, no more divisions. Just her, in all her complexity, creating until her final cut, her final layer unveiled. In that wholeness, she had uncovered her truest treasure. 5 years later, as her 80th birthday loomed, Odora found herself reflecting more deeply on the legacy she had built. The Kingsley Center had become a cornerstone of Briarwood Glen's artistic landscape, drawing visitors from across the nation and earning architectural accolades for its sustainable design and harmonious blend with its natural surroundings. More than a building, it was a haven for women artists of all ages, especially those who, like Odora, had discovered their creative calling later in life. On a crisp Tuesday morning, she sat in the center's meditation garden, her favorite retreat, watching a group of resident artists sketch the blooming dogwoods. Among them was Celeste Stein Sterling Hayes, whose transformation was a quiet marvel. Having left her law practice, Celestine had unearthed a latent gift for botanical illustration, channeling the precision once reserved for corporate contracts into delicate renderings of native plants. Her reconciliation with Viva, her mother, had deepened through their shared work at the center, and Odora felt a pang of pride watching her daughter-in-law's quiet joy. This space had fostered countless such transformations, offering women second, third, or even fourth chances to claim their creative lives. There you are. Viva's voice broke through, her approach brisk despite her recent hip replacement. The film crew's here for the documentary. They've set up in the main gallery. Odora sighed, reluctant to leave the garden's serenity. Can't they start with someone else? Maybe one of the younger artists? Viva's stern look was all too familiar. Dora, this documentary is about you and the center you built. The director scheduled today to capture you with the monarch installation as the backdrop. You know how the light hits it perfectly at noon. She was right, of course. The monarch, Odora's most audacious work, had been unveiled last year to mark the center's 5th anniversary. Crafted from thousands of meticulously cut paper layers, it depicted a butterfly's metamorphosis from chrysalis to flight, its illusion of depth and motion embodying the center's mission of transformation. Very well, Odora conceded, accepting Viva's steadying hand as she rose. At 80, her hands remained nimble for intricate work, but her knees grumbled with every step. Have you seen Wren this morning? He was supposed to help with the lighting. Viva's smile widened. Already there, directing the crew like a pro. That grandson of yours has quite the eye. Indeed he did. At 21, Wren had blossomed into a gifted multimedia artist, blending the paper-cutting techniques Odora had taught him with digital animation to create works that bridged tradition and innovation. Fresh from graduating at the Rhode Island School of Design, he had returned to Briarwood Glen as the center's media coordinator while honing his own portfolio. As they entered the main gallery, Odora spotted Wren, his lanky frame hunched over a control panel, adjusting lights with laser focus. 2 degrees left, he instructed a technician, then glanced up, his face breaking into a grin. Grandma, the director's been asking for you. Wait till you see the setup. The monarch looks unreal on camera. The gallery buzzed with activity, transformed into a temporary film studio with cameras, lights, and sound equipment encircling a seating area in front of the installation. The documentary, Late Bloomers Women Who Reimagine Themselves, was the vision of an acclaimed filmmaker inspired by the center's story. For Odora, it was another chance to reflect on her journey, not just her own, but the countless women whose lives had been touched by this place. As she settled into the interview chair, the monarch glowing behind her, she felt a quiet certainty. Her hidden fortune had become a shared treasure, a legacy of wholeness that would ripple outward for generations. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the magazine studio, casting a soft glow on Eleanor Verne, a woman in her 50s whose warm smile and thoughtful demeanor instantly put me at ease. As the director, she greeted me with a sincerity that felt like an old friend's embrace. Miss Kingsley, we're so grateful you could join us today, she said, her voice rich with genuine curiosity. We're not just here to chronicle your extraordinary journey, but to dive into your perspective on how creativity can bloom at any stage of life. Her words carried a quiet weight, as if she understood the depth of what she was asking me to share. As the crew bustled around, adjusting lights and cameras, I settled into a plush chair carefully positioned in front of the monarch installation, a mesmerizing cascade of light and motion that seemed to dance behind me like a living metaphor for transformation. My grandson Wren, ever my cheerleader, stood behind the monitors, his face lit with pride as he flashed me a thumbs up. Vivica, my steadfast friend, took a seat just out of the camera's view, her presence a silent anchor grounding me in this moment. Eleanor gave a nod to the camera operator, her eyes meeting mine with encouragement. Ready when you are, she said, and with that, the interview began. The opening questions were familiar, tracing the contours of my dual life and the late revelation that had upended my world. I'd recounted this story countless times since it became public, but Eleanor's approach was different. She didn't linger on the surface. She steered us into deeper waters with a question that caught me off guard. You've often spoken about integration as distinct from balance, she observed, her tone inviting me to unravel the thought. Could you elaborate on why that distinction resonates so deeply, especially for women artists? I paused, letting the questions settle in my chest. Balance, I explained, is a seductive idea, a promise that we can neatly divide our lives into equal parts: work, family, creative passion. But it's a mirage, especially for women, who are often left feeling inadequate when they can't juggle it all perfectly. I gestured toward the monarch installation, its fluid motion a reminder of life's complexity. Integration, on the other hand, embraces the messiness of it all. It's about recognizing that these parts, motherhood, artistry, duty, aren't separate weights to be balanced, but threads woven into a single, vibrant tapestry. They don't need to be equal or isolated. They need to be honored as part of one whole, beautiful life. Eleanor's thoughtful nod told me she understood, her eyes reflecting a shared recognition of this truth. She shifted gears, her next question reaching into the future. This center you've built, what do you hope it achieves long after you're gone? My heart swelled as I answered. I envisioned a sanctuary where women of all ages could unearth or reclaim their creative voices, free from society's rigid timelines. Too often we're told that artistic emergence follows a predictable path: education in youth, success in early adulthood, acclaim in middle age. But that narrative erases so many women whose creativity is delayed by caregiving, financial burdens, or a lack of encouragement. I wanted this center to be a beacon, proving that artistry can flourish at any age, enriched by the depth of lived experience. The interview stretched on for nearly 2 hours, a winding exploration of the center's programs, my artistic process, and the way my family ties had evolved since my revelation. As we neared the end, Eleanor leaned forward with a final question that felt like a gift. Looking back on your journey from office manager to nationally recognized artist, what advice would you offer women who feel they've missed their chance to chase their creative dreams? I smiled, my mind flooding with images of the countless women who had walked through the center's doors, their faces etched with doubt but brimming with possibility. I'd tell them that missed chances aren't lost forever, I said, my voice steady with conviction. It's never too late to start or pick up where you left off. The wisdom, pain, and joy you carry in your 50s, 60s, 70s, or beyond, they're not burdens. They're treasures that make your work uniquely yours. I turned to the camera, my gaze direct and unwavering. The greatest harm we do ourselves is believing our time has passed. As long as you're breathing, your time is now. When the crew packed up and left, Ren joined me for lunch at the center's cozy cafe, his eyes sparkling with excitement. You were incredible, Grandma, he said, his voice bubbling with pride. The footage with the monarch installation, it's going to be stunning. The metaphor is perfect. I reached over to straighten his collar, a small gesture that felt as natural as breathing, despite his good-natured eye roll. Thank you, dear, I said, warmth spreading through me. And how are your projects coming along? His face shifted, a flicker of nervous anticipation replacing his usual confidence. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that, he said, his words tentative. I've been offered a residency at the Osaka Digital Arts Institute. 6 months in Japan, working with some of the most cutting-edge multimedia artists out there. My heart leapt for him, even as a quiet ache settled in at the thought of his absence. Ren, that's incredible, I exclaimed, my delight genuine. When would you leave? September, he replied, his voice tinged with hesitation. But Grandma, it's so far away. With your birthday coming up and the center's expansion plans. I reached across the table, taking his hand in mine, my grip firm but tender. Renfrost, listen to me, I said, my tone leaving no room for doubt. You will accept this residency. You will go to Japan, soak up every lesson those artists have to offer, and you will not spend a single moment worrying about me or this center. His eyes searched mine, torn between excitement and guilt. But you've always been there for me, he said softly. I want to be there for you too. My heart swelled at his words, but I shook my head. You are there for me, I assured him. Loving someone means cheering for their growth, even when it takes them across the world. Do you think I've poured my heart into this center, mentoring young artists, just to clip my own grandson's wings? A slow smile spread across his face, relief breaking through his uncertainty. You're sure? He asked. Absolutely certain, I replied, my voice resolute. Besides, Japan's video calls are top-notch. You can show me your work, and I'll show you mine. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from Imagin, fresh off a ceramics exhibition in Barcelona where her sculptural vessels had turned heads. Her voice, as always, cut straight to the point, softened only slightly by years of artistic exploration. The documentary crew said it went well, she began. Did they get what they needed? I confirmed they had, mentioning their plans to interview her and other family members next week about how our relationships had shifted since my revelation. She paused, her silence heavy with thought. Mom, I've been thinking about your 80th birthday, she said. It's a big one. The family wants to do something special. I chuckled, cautioning her against anything too grand. At my age, elaborate parties feel like tempting fate, I said. She laughed, a rare sound that warmed me. Always practical, she teased. No, not elaborate, but meaningful. We're still planning, but keep the weekend free. After we hung up, I made my way to my studio in the center's East Wing, a space designed for teaching rather than the solitary creation of my home studio. Today, I was leading a master class for 8 women, aged 48 to 73, each rediscovering artistic passions long set aside for family or career. As I demonstrated layered cutting techniques, I watched their faces, focused, intent, occasionally lit with the spark of a creative breakthrough. These moments were the heart of the center's mission, the quiet triumph of women reclaiming their voices after years of silence. Precision comes with practice, I told them as we wrapped up. Your hands will learn what your mind already knows. Trust the process and your own vision. That evening, walking home along the path to Wisteria Court, I reflected on the 12 years since I'd revealed my hidden fortune to my skeptical children. What began as a defiant act of self-assertion had blossomed into a movement, touching lives far beyond my own. My modest colonial home had evolved, renovated to support my art, with the once hidden basement studio now an open space, its door never closed. Family photos hung alongside artistic awards, a visual testament to the integration I'd fought for. As I prepared a simple dinner, my phone rang. Thorne calling from the airport before a financial conference in London. Just checking in, he said, his voice warm despite the bustle around him. Did you get the package I sent? I smiled, picturing the exquisite jewelry box he'd crafted for my birthday, its intricate marquetry depicting the Sage Blossom Shores cottage, where I spent my summers. It arrived yesterday, I confirmed. Thorne, it's stunning. Your woodworking is extraordinary. His pride was palpable, even through the phone. I've been tinkering with that inlay technique for months, he said. We chatted briefly about his trip and his youngest, our conversation a quiet reminder of the family we'd rebuilt, piece by piece, over the years. As I sipped my morning coffee, the familiar warmth of the mug grounded me in the quiet joy of routine. My daughter's recent acceptance into college still lingered in my mind, a milestone that filled me with pride and a tender ache for the years that had slipped by. Our conversations, once strained by unspoken truths, now carried an easy affection, each word a testament to the bond we'd forged since I'd laid bare my hidden life as EK Wisteria. That revelation had stripped away the veils between us, forcing my family to see me not just as a mother or a professional, but as a woman with a vibrant, creative soul. Those moments of connection, simple yet profound, wrapped my heart in a quiet glow, proof that authenticity could mend what time and silence had frayed. That evening, Fern stopped by my mom, her presence as warm as the fading sunlight. She carried a draft of her latest article, a profile of a 78-year-old former nurse who had blossomed into a celebrated textile artist after retirement. Can you give this a read? She asked, her voice tinged with the careful earnestness of someone who respected her craft. I want to make sure I've captured her journey without slipping into cliches about late-life reinvention. We settled onto the porch swing, the creak of the chains blending with the soft hum of twilight. As we pored over her words, discussing the delicate balance of honoring a woman's late emergence without romanticizing or oversimplifying it, I marveled at Fern's gift. Her sensitivity and sharp insight had earned her a respected place in arts journalism, particularly in illuminating the often overlooked contributions of women. The conversation flowed effortlessly, her questions sparking reflections on creativity, resilience, and the courage to begin anew. As she gathered her things to leave, she paused, her eyes soft with emotion. You know, Mom, when I think about how close we came to never knowing about your work, about EK Wisteria, it scares me. All that beauty, all that art, could have stayed hidden forever. Her words pierced me, not with pain but with gratitude. I smiled, my heart swelling. But it didn't, Fern, and that's what counts. After she left, I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, its gentle aroma soothing my senses, and sank into my favorite chair by the window. The stars were just beginning to prick the darkening sky, and at 80, I felt not a sense of winding down, but of unfolding, each day revealing new layers of myself. My hands, still steady, continued the intricate paper cutting that had defined my artistic practice for decades. My mind buzzed with fresh ideas, eager to explore uncharted, creative paths. And my heart, it had grown immeasurably, touched by the transformations I'd witnessed in those I loved. The Sterling Kingsley Foundation, born from my once hidden fortune, now nurtured dozens of women artists each year through grants, residencies, and exhibitions. The Kingsley Center had become a haven, drawing creators and admirers from across the country. My work adorned the walls of major museums and private collections, studied by scholars and emulated by aspiring artists. Yet these accolades, while deeply gratifying, paled beside the personal metamorphoses I'd seen unfold. Imagin, my daughter, had discovered her artistic voice through ceramics, her hands shaping clay into expressions of her soul. Thorne, once restless, had found meditative calm in woodworking, each stroke of his tools a quiet act of creation. Fern's journalism had become a beacon, shining light on women's hidden creative lives. Ren, my grandson, had carved out his own artistic path, blending tradition with bold innovation. Even Vivica, through her philanthropy, had found unexpected healing in her relationship with her daughter. These transformations, sparked by my own late-in-life integration, were the true measure of my legacy. As my 80th birthday approached, I kept returning to a question posed by a Leliner during a documentary interview. What advice would I give to women who felt they'd missed their chance? My answer then had been sincere but incomplete, skimming the surface of a deeper truth. What I hadn't fully expressed was the exhilarating freedom of finally embracing one's authentic self after years of compromise and concealment, the relief of shedding the weight of divided identities, the joy of being truly seen. These were the gifts of my revelation, gifts I wished every woman could claim. On the morning of my 80th birthday, I rose with the dawn, drawn to my home studio where a new piece awaited. A commission for a children's hospital in Meridian Heights, it depicted a forest scene woven with hidden animals, designed to spark wonder in young patients enduring difficult treatments. I lost myself in the rhythm of cutting and layering, the world fading until a knock at the door broke my focus. Imagin stood there, her expression soft yet hesitant, a rare vulnerability in her eyes. "Happy birthday, Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can I come in?" I set down my tools and opened my arms, pulling her into an embrace that felt like a homecoming. Once, such closeness had been unthinkable, our affections stilted by the walls I'd built around my true self. "Thank you, dear," I said, my voice warm. "You're up early." She smiled, a flicker of excitement mingling with nerves. "We all are. We have something to show you before the celebration this afternoon, if you're up for it." Curiosity piqued, I followed her to her car, where Thorne waited behind the wheel. "Where are we going?" I asked as we pulled away from Wisteria Court. Imogen's reply was cryptic, her eyes sparkling. "You'll see, it's not far." We arrived at the Kingsley Center, its halls unusually still for a Saturday. Thorne led us through the familiar corridors toward the exhibition wing, where muffled voices and faint movements hinted at something stirring behind the gallery doors. "What's going on?" I asked, suspicion growing. Imagin and Thorne shared a knowing glance. "Your birthday present," Thorne said simply, pushing open the doors. The gallery had been transformed into a breathtaking tribute. Every wall was alive with photographs, hundreds of them, chronicling my journey from tentative early sketches to the bold masterworks of EK Wisteria. Mingled among them were images of my family, the evolution of the Kingsley Center, and the women we'd uplifted through the foundation. In the center of the room stood my children, grandchildren, friends, colleagues, and artists whose lives had intertwined with mine, their voices rising in a joyful chorus. "Surprise!" Fern stepped forward, taking my hands in hers, her touch grounding and warm. "Mom, for your 80th, we wanted to give you something that honors not just your art, but the journey that brought you here. This exhibition, Odora Kingsley's Journey to Wholeness, is a celebration of your path from hidden artist to public creator, from a divided self to an integrated whole. Ren joined her, his earnestness palpable. We've been working on this for months, Grandma. Everyone pitched in, photographs, stories, reflections on how your courage has shaped their lives. It's not just about your work. It's about the ripples it's created. Overwhelmed, I moved through the gallery, each photograph a window into my transformation. There were images I'd never seen. Damon and me on our wedding day, radiant with youthful hope. My children as toddlers, playing at my feet while I worked in secret. Me at Briarwood Insurance, professional and composed, my creativity tucked beneath a stack of files. Alongside these were snapshots of my artistic rise, exhibition posters, reviews, articles chronicling EK Wisteria's ascent. Most poignant were the testimonials from family, artists, and even former colleagues. Their words weaving a portrait of a woman whose courage had sparked introspection and discovery in others. At the gallery's heart stood a podium bearing a leather-bound book. Imagin guided me to it, her voice soft with reverence. This is the core of the exhibition. We've gathered stories from over 100 women whose lives you've touched, artists who found their voice late, mothers who reclaimed their creativity, professionals who uncovered hidden talents. Each one traces their awakening back to you. My hands trembled as I opened the book, reading the first entry. At 62, I gave myself permission to paint, inspired by Odora Kingsley's story. Now at 70, I've had my first solo exhibition. It's never too late to become who you are. Tears blurred my vision as I turned the pages, each story a testament to the movement my journey had sparked. A movement I'd never dared imagine when I first revealed my secret to my skeptical children. Do you like it? Ren asked, his voice edged with worry. I looked up at the faces around me. My family, no longer distant but deeply connected. My colleagues, no longer separate from my creative self. The artists we'd supported, carrying forward the mission of emergence in their own ways. Like it? I echoed, my voice thick with emotion. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received, not because it celebrates me, but because it celebrates all of us, our journeys toward wholeness, our courage in becoming who we truly are. As the celebration wound down, guests lingering in the gallery, I paused before a photograph I'd never seen. Me in my 20s at Briarwood Insurance, a small paper cutting half hidden beneath files, my face serious, my creativity a guarded secret. Beside it hung a recent portrait from my studio, my 79-year-old self surrounded by my work, my eyes alight with the joy of creation. The contrast between concealment and revelation, restraint and freedom, told the story of my life. As I studied these two versions of myself, separated by over half a century, I felt a profound sense of completion. The fortune I'd once hidden, my art, my truth, had proven far more valuable than I'd ever dreamed, not in wealth or acclaim, but in the courage to live authentically, to create unapologetically, and to inspire others to do the same. Whatever lay ahead, more years of creation or the inevitable end, I would face it whole, undivided, and fully myself. In that wholeness lay my true fortune, a legacy of courage and creativity beyond measure.